And recording. Wait, recording, and we're recording. I think so. We are. Um, Everybody knows Rob Anton. He's been on this podcast a million times, and I'm trying to. I don't want to. I'm gonna break that if I try to brute force it. I don't think a microphone is something you can brute force on.
I mean, I think you're in a good position there. I can hear you clear.
You can? Okay. Yeah. I just like I was
You're good.
tightening everything the other day, and I've somehow got this thing. This thing's supposed to kind of like pivot like that, but it's not, and I don't want to just grab it and twist because that's normally what I do when shit's stuck. But I don't think a delicate microphone is necessarily the thing to do that with. So
microphones hitting the ground or hitting anything hard
it's not good.
Adverse to the microphone's life.
yeah, I don't think so. So we were texting, and I think I told you, and this happens a lot whenever I have guests, and we're talking off the podcast. They'll start telling me an interesting story, and I'll be like, save it for the podcast. And the reason is because I want myself to have legitimate reactions, you know,
Sure.
not like those shitty YouTube channels, like watch me react to, expert. Like, no, those are kill yourself.
Right.
But you, who I would argue that I know you better than probably 99% of podcast guests. For all the new listeners, Rob was a very close friend of my oldest brother who's not with us anymore. But you started telling me a story I had never heard. We were texting, and you're like, "Yeah, did I tell you about the time when I was like detained by the Department of Homeland Security?" And I was like, "What?" And mind you, Rob was like episode number 4, I think, and we are now on 322. And Rob was like, "Yeah, I was," and I was like, "That's an episode." And so, with that introduction, I'm gonna shut the fuck up. And Rob, please regale me.
It is and it isn't a story. I think it was more of a time and a place. So okay, so let me set the stage. I'd already been at school in Georgia for 1 year, but I went to Chambly High first. I didn't start at Pius.
For everyone that doesn't know, Rob moved from Canada down to Georgia.
Yes, because I was expelled from my high school up in Canada.
I didn't know that.
My father sent me away to straighten me out
into Georgia, where he met my older brother. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You can fill in the blanks, absolutely. Yeah. So I'd already been there for a year, and in the previous, before summer vacation, I had gone through interviews for 12 different schools in the Atlanta area to continue going to high school. That's how I ended up with Pius. Basically, it was one of 5. And it's the one I felt most comfortable at that I got accepted to. So I ended up at Pius. It was really, really random, you know what I mean? And I was raised Catholic, so it was easy for me to get in there. It was bing bang. They called up the priest.
Yeah.
Is this guy baptized? Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, he's good. We'll let him. He gets the.
And so that was kind of my pass in, if you will.
He's one of the family.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a year, so that had happened, but 9/11 had just happened, just the past September, right? Yeah. And things changed completely. The way visas were processed, the way everything changed, the way you traveled, it all just changed in a very short period of time. Not everybody, I think, remembers this, or a lot of people were young and didn't necessarily travel at that age. I traveled at an abnormally young age, internationally, so it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But on my way back, I guess my parents have been kind of dragging their heels, getting the paperwork, actually picking the paperwork up for my visa. It had already been processed. I was already ready. But so we didn't have the paperwork, and I was already school was about to start. It was the Friday, school would have started Monday or something like that. It was they had to get me there so that I didn't miss that first, because it's new school. Mm-hmm. They didn't want me to be at a new school and also late for class. So they just told my dad, just drop him off at the Toronto airport. And he literally did. He dropped me off and left. And then I tried to go through, and then they're like, why are you going back? I was like, I'm just visiting my aunt and uncle. And then they're like, all right. And then they're like, "Can you come with me, please?" They took me to like a holding room, and I sat there for like, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour. And then two agents came in, like with badges and everything. And they're like, why are you going to the United States? And I'm like, I'm going to see my aunt and uncle, which is like technically the truth. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
lived with them, right? So I was like, I'm going to see them. They're like, did you just finish? Like, did you just go to school for a year here? And I was like, yes. Why didn't you say that? And like all this kind of shit. And I was like, I'm 16, right?
Because I'm
So I'm not
16 and
even
I'm
like a
scared shitless.
exactly, and I'm not even I'm still a minor, right? So they're being nice with me to say the least. But at this moment, my dad is completely left. He's like all the way back home almost, which is like we lived. I grew up maybe an hour and a half from downtown Toronto, like drive in the boonies, like in the middle of nowhere. Um, so he's almost all the way back there. So that's why like I ended up being late. But the scariest part was they're like, if you come back and you try to get in here without a visa again, we'll charge you with like lying. I can't remember the exact like wording he used, but it was basically I'll charge you with lying against the United States, which could have been a
Yeah.
bogus charge at the time. I was
Yeah.
16. I think they were
Yeah.
just trying to like scare me.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks later, came back, had the visa, and I'm pretty sure it was the same immigration person like that I was dealing with at the kiosk or whatever, and they're like, "I see you got it,"
Hey, you
because it
did
was
the
like
thing.
there was a weird time, yeah, because it was a weird time,
Yeah.
early 2000s. It went from like travel from Canada to the United States was like literally like, "Hey, see you, we're going shopping." Like we
Yeah.
would
Like,
just drive into each other's countries,
yeah. I mean,
basically.
you guys were like
Like
just the
the
upstairs
smuggling was
neighbor.
immense
Yeah.
because nobody cared,
Yeah.
right?
And
Like
it's Canada. It's fucking
exactly, like
Canada.
it's almost yeah, it was very similar places to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like that was just like the reason why I was 2 weeks late essentially for school. So it
Yeah.
was like this big weird thing with like I kind of hated it in retrospect because it drew attention to me. You know what I mean? Because not only am I like the new kid from Canada, I'm also 2 weeks late.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, I remember we went in for like, I went in as like, did you ever have Lammers, Mr. Lammers?
Yeah. Matt
Yeah,
Lammers. Yeah.
yeah. So like, it was 10th grade biology, and yeah, it was the day I showed up, we had a test,
Yeah.
and he's like, you don't have to take it if you don't want to. But I was like, no, I'll do that, and I ended
We
up getting like a 93 on it.
that he was the teacher I had for when you had to do like summer reading,
Okay.
and we had to read a book about Krakatoa, the volcano. But
Oh, okay, okay.
was like the book was like a it was more like a research paper, like published,
Sure.
and less of a story.
It's just
So it was
dry as
just
fuck.
brackets and like it was like the genome and phylum and kingdom of like the bacteria found there and the different sedimentary. It was a research. It was essentially a paper.
Yeah, yeah. You're
I was
reading
like
your doctorate.
16, and I was like, I remember reading it up at my aunt's lake house in I think Maine. So
Mhm.
this would have been like 2006. I remember I was up there just reading it that summer, and I was like, I can't. I was like, I can't finish this, and I don't think it will matter if I do, because even if I took a test on what I've read already, I get an F. So I remember going into, that was like that back then, 16. That was my first brush with rebellion. It was like, I'm not gonna finish this Krakatoa research paper, and I remember going to Matt Lammer's class on the first day of the school year, and he was like, "So you guys all read the book?" We were like, "No," and he's like, "Who wants to go make volcanoes?" We were like, "What?" And we just went out into the parking
Yeah,
lot, and he's just putting like
yeah.
Mentos and Diet Coke, and
Sounds like.
he was like, "All right, enjoy your junior year." It was just like
Mhm.
that. That's Matt Lammers, but
We had a really good sized department. Like as far as like head, I don't know if did you take chemistry, Dalton?
no, but all my smart
No.
friends did.
Okay. Well, your brother did as well.
Yeah,
And him and I used to, Miss Dalton used to pay us to do her yard work. I don't know if you remember
I
that
didn't
or
know
not.
that.
Yeah. Like, she paid good money too. And she was a badass. She used to drive like a Dodge Stealth, which is like a Mitsubishi 2000 GT, which is like a twin turboed inline six motor, like
Mhm.
fucking badass turbocharged car.
Fuck
She used
yeah.
to drive it to school, like this cherry fucking red
Did
sports car.
did one of the
Badass. And she's
teachers
like this old chemistry teacher. Like,
did one of the teachers have Am I like? Is there like a false memory in my head? Did someone have an H1 Hummer? Is that
Yeah,
not?
I remember always seeing one in the front area.
Wasn't there
Like
one like a badass like? Yeah, those trucks were like
I,
10 feet wide.
yeah, I almost guarantee. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an important fact, but I just remember that. Yeah, dude, St. Pius was an incredible school. I mean, I can say that
Yeah,
15 years in hindsight.
I
That
enjoyed I enjoyed school, and I luckily gotten through my kind of super rebellious phase by the time I got to Pius. So anything that was like bad in Pius, I was just like, you guys are fucking babies, whatever. Like,
yeah.
I was like, at that time, I was like, I've been interviewed by the police in regards to an arson case. I've been
I'm like I've been detained by
I
the
got
Department of
stopped by
Homeland Security.
exactly. And you guys are like, let's wear shorts instead of pants one day. Like,
I
oh,
didn't
okay,
say
all right.
prayer. I just clasped my hands and said and
Yeah,
kept my mouth closed. I told the teacher I was saying it in my head.
yeah,
I
exactly.
wasn't saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember I felt like such a
It was
fuck
funny.
up because John went through 4 years at St. Pius and never got a detention. And I remember he got like some gold star when he graduated.
That's not technically true. We all no one in my graduating class graduated without a detention. Didn't you know that?
Well, I
We
remember
all got detained. We all got detentioned in our final year. They
well,
detentioned us all in the auditorium.
well they must have waived it for John because I remember he got like this. Okay, I was there.
I
Yeah,
think it was one of those like we all got it and it was like across the board of demerit, but
that's what I mean.
it brought up the average. So
That's
do you
what I
know what I
mean.
mean? Like
Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
mean.
exactly.
It's
At
like
the end of the day, he was the only one with one.
that's what
Yeah.
I mean. It
Yeah.
was the curve. It was the curve on the
Yeah.
test. It's like
No, we were
Tetris.
terrible. We had like 3 senior pranks in 1 week. And like Father Lopez got mad at us. That
Wow,
takes a lot. You know what I mean? Like
that takes a lot.
yeah, you got like pissed with us.
That actually takes. I'm
They
actually a little offended.
yeah, they rounded us all up and kept us for because like it was for the alarm clock prank.
Mm,
Everybody
every day, yeah,
set up alarms in their lockers, either on their phones or actual alarm clocks.
yeah.
And they set them all for like 11:10 or some shit like that. I don't know. I was in Coach Carter's class at the time. Um, and one went off early and he hears it and he's like, what's that? And they just like closed the door. And like people kept going like, can I go to the bathroom? And like leaving the door open so that we would hear it. And basically it took them, I don't know, 20 minutes to go through all the lockers and collect all of the like either cell phones that were ringing or alarms that were ringing or like whatever. They confiscated everything. And then principal, oh, what the hell? How did I forget his name?
Spellman.
Spelling, yeah. Spelman got on and he's like, since the senior class decided to like delay class for everybody for 20 minutes, they can spend 20 minutes in the auditorium at the end of the day. And they did. They made us all sit in the auditorium.
That's a fair trade.
But then us, like, and I'm pretty sure GP would be able to confirm this at the time, we sat there and got like basically the whole class to be like robber, 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 robber. Like I'll like South Park at the time. Like, even when we were all caged, we were all just like a bunch of gays.
Well, I remember I felt like I was gonna go to Guantanamo because it was my first day at Pius and my hair was too long. And I remember I was in Miss Clister's homeroom,
Yeah.
who had been there since like the
Oh,
50s. And
I
I got
know
a
this is.
detention at 7:55 on my first day, meaning I got a
Yeah,
detention
she didn't feel great.
before high school started. And I was so upset because John never got one, technically.
I was lucky that I had Lammers, and then I don't know. I avoided Clister until 12th grade. So,
Well, I was also in the
but I
wake
didn't
of.
have anybody. What's that?
No, go on.
No, I was just gonna say I didn't have like I didn't have super strict teachers right off like in first semester, and I remember specifically someone coming up to me in the stairwell and being like, "Have you gotten your haircut recently?" And I just thought they were like making fun of my hair. I was like, kind of like, "Fuck you. Like, you know what I mean?
It's like
It's
maybe
who
I
the fuck
did,
are you,
maybe I
man?
maybe I
Right?
did, maybe I didn't.
But then, yeah, I was kind of giving like an answer like that, and they're like, "No, man, you gotta get like you can't like have it over your ears." I was like, "Oh, okay, you're like looking out for me. You're not like starting shit." Okay, I got it. This is a prison. Okay,
I was about
got
to say this is being in the
it.
prison camp and them
Yeah,
saying like
exactly,
straighten your Star of David. They're like,
exactly,
hey, no,
exactly.
they're like straighten your Star of David. And you're like da da.
Oh, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
but I mean,
remember.
it's
Yeah,
still I don't know. We had a lot of like characters in my grade. I would say
yeah.
we just had a lot of people who would do. They would just push the envelope so much, and like with everybody, that's all they did.
Do you, do you remember? Do you remember when people would Ninja Turtle, or what was it called, turtling? When you turtle a backpack, you'd go out during lunch and everyone would have their bags like against the wall and like that like outdoor walkway, and you go out and you just pick someone at random. It was, I mean, it was truly, it was a terrorist attack because it was just random terror, and it was, you would take their backpack into the bathroom or something. You'd unzip it, you take out all their books, you turn the backpack inside out, put the books back in, and then zip it up from the inside. And so it was just inside out. It's just called turtling. It's just for
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, no, I missed that.
Oh, well, and I remember
When you
so
say turtling, it makes me think of like ninth graders with all of their textbooks in their back,
yeah,
like
yeah.
hunched over,
Yeah,
turtle.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Maybe it wasn't called turtling, but
I don't know. Maybe it could be.
I
You're a
remember
couple
it
years left.
happened to I remember it happened to me, and like an adult, I couldn't stand it, and I went out and I thought I targeted who I who I thought was this girl in my class that did it to me, and I thought I targeted her, and so I remember me and my friend David took this backpack to the bathroom, and we turtled it, we turned it inside up, blah blah blah, and then I remember we took like a whole roll of Saran wrap, like whole like 500 yards, and went around the whole thing. And then we took tinfoil and we did a whole roll of tinfoil on it. And we called it Sputniking, like the first Soviet satellite,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. The
gold,
little
that
round ball.
the silverish
Yeah.
ball, which called it Sputnik. And we went and threw it back in. So it's just this shiny ball. And
Jesus.
I remember going out and like sitting right in front of the chapel and like watching, and me like wanting to see the girl just like be destroyed. And like that girl was nowhere to be seen. And I remember all the students came out and everyone got their backpacks. And I remember seeing this one like tiny freshman kid, and he's just looking around for his backpack. And slowly, as the crowd clears and he realizes the only thing left is that silver brick. And I just remember he started to cry. And I was like, what have I become? I was like, I've become the thing like I swore to never be.
Holy
I
shit.
was like, I remember that hurt. I like went to Father Lopez's class, and it's Father Lopez just smiling. How are you,
I
son? And
don't.
I was just like,
I
I'm a
can't
bad man.
remember. I can't remember any, and this is could have been just because like I wasn't part of it, but like any targeted harassment towards anybody. It was almost like there was groups definitely, but neither. I don't know. They didn't really fuck with each other. It would have been like I don't know. You would have had to have actively done something
Mm-hmm.
against a senior in those days, or like someone against our class for people that have like shit with you. But
Yeah.
largely across the board, our whole class was like everybody would go to the same parties.
Hmm. Not my
Like it
class.
was weird. Like even though there was like splits, definitely there was cliques. Um, there was only like two real like prom parties. The other one, like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't so like segregated and different. It was there was like you're with this group or you're with this group, but there was always overlap and like
Mm.
people were friends with other people. I think it was just because there was a lot of clubs and shit,
Yeah.
and so people would be and the way they ran our classes, you always ended up like crossing over with people.
Yeah. Mine was more like tribes in Afghanistan. It was like hyper partisan, hyper divided. At least that's how I thought. Maybe I just wasn't popular.
Really,
I was like, everyone hates
really.
me. And in hindsight, it's like, no, you're just kind of a douche. That's the red pill that's hard to swallow. Is you're like, they're all conspiring
Yeah, I
against me.
mean,
And it's like, maybe you're just not that nice.
yeah, John and I were kind of I don't know, like we definitely had a group, like
Mm-hmm.
JP part of it, and like there was other people that were part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was also like I don't know, it's weird. there was like different centers, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like certain people hung out. Like JP was friends with us, but he wasn't. His best friend at the time was like Sean. He and Sean were always like
Mm-hmm.
hanging around with one
Yeah.
another. Whereas
Yeah.
like me and John were like always hanging out with each other because like I don't know, it just worked like that. There's always like groups of people,
Yeah.
and like I don't know if you remember John's. I guess they dated briefly in high school. Not even maybe they were just friends for like a long time. Um, again, I don't want to name other people outside of our group of friends, but like
Probably.
her and another girl were like really good friends, and they were always together. But like the group of us would come at parties and stuff like that.
Did you ever hear about that?
Give me 1 second. The connection's kind of breaking up. I'm gonna connect a LAN and see if it
You're
improves anything.
fine.
Give me 1 sec, dude.
You're fine. Rob Anton, Canadian correspondent, going off the deep end. We don't know where he is. He's apparently leaving us. He has that black background. He very well could be in Fallujah, perhaps in Abbottabad. Who knows? But yeah, the I think he's back. Is he? Rob, are you back?
Yep, I think so. You
Did
hear me?
you? Yeah. Did you
Okay.
ever hear about? And I think it was my junior year, maybe my senior year, and it was there's a teacher who at the time I remember thinking was really old. He was like 28. Now I'm 30. But I remember he was 28, but he had just come back from Iraq. And he was not UGA. He was a St. Pius alumni.
Okay.
And he got like a job coming back, just doing whatever, teaching whatever, probably going to get his degree. And, they gave him a job, stand up, clean cut Marine.
Yeah.
And, I mean, had just come back from like active combat deployment, like was in the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And came immediately to St. Pius. There was like a couple days between like covery fire and like morning prayer.
Yeah.
So I remember, and he was like a hall monitor. When he would sit out near like the dean's offices, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember like the story coming up because I remember we at one moment I remember Mr. Spellman coming on and saying that he had forgot to announce that there was this like new faculty meeting, and basically we all got out at like lunch, like no one knew why, and so like all the seniors drove home, and like all the younger people had like parents come pick them up. It was whatever, and then like there was like an email to everyone that we didn't have school the next day, and we were all like, "Cool, this is like a Wednesday," and it was like badass. And I remember being in the gym in where I lived in Duluth, and I remember seeing like an aerial shot, like a helicopter shot of St. Pius. And I was like, what the fuck? And it turns out this guy I think he might still work there. I don't know. Um, he was sitting there, kind of at like the nexus of several hallways,
Yeah.
and he was like good friends with Mr. Spellman, like thanks for the job on short term notice, and he's like, of course, thank you for your service, just all goodness all around. But apparently, and like I don't fault him, but apparently he started just like looking down like hallways and stuff, and was just sketching lines of fire. Like he had just
Oh
come back
shit.
from and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel for the guy. He had just come back from active combat deployed in an urban area.
Yeah.
So it's probably ingrained into his mind that like you don't sit anywhere without knowing where's immediate cover, where am I going to poke out?
Mm-hmm.
And so to him, it was just like, hey, if anything ever went south, this is how I would defend this school.
Mm-hmm.
He just, being himself, went to show the principal. And had the principal been there, he probably would have been like, cool, but maybe we shouldn't have this. And it would have been diffused right there.
Spellman didn't feel it.
What? Well, no, Spellman wasn't.
Spellman didn't field it, right? Yeah,
Well,
it
that's the
wasn't
thing,
there.
is Spellman wasn't there, so he just left it on his desk. And so Spellman, being a good principal with 1,000 kids under his control,
Yeah.
saw a piece of notebook paper with lines of fire on it
Mm-hmm.
and like a map of the school. He called the police, police called the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
We didn't know, but we were evacuated that day. We just
Evacuated.
thought we got out at noon. When we were
Yeah.
gone the next day, it's because they brought in the bomb squad and went through the whole school.
Sweet. Jeez.
And it wasn't, and if I recall correctly, I think this guy eventually was like, "What is this about?" He's like, he's in this mode where he's like, "Fuck." If I recall, and I could be butchering this, but if I recall, it was like, "Oh man, I was just thinking about what if something bad happened." And he went and told Mr. Spellman. Mr. Spellman's like,
But
"What,
what I
was
wanted
it
to get
you?"
at,
And he was
yeah.
like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh fuck." And
Yeah.
like, had Mr. Spellman just not been getting lunch at the time, probably would have been. He probably would have been like, "Thank you, like, hey, thank you, again, great American, but this is a school, maybe not the. Oh, okay."
Right.
But it was, so there was no like nefarious actions. I don't think it was just, he's fresh out of that, and he's just.
It's weird. I don't know. Maybe
It's a weird thing. Sure.
I think that there's other shit that is like, okay, but had there been other things implemented, this would have been completely avoidable. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like if there was like some kind of military program where like, okay, if you come back from like a live fireplace, you get a couple weeks of like to like decompress, and we like talk it out, and we get you back to like living as somewhat of a civilian. I know it's not that easy. I don't know how long it would take.
I think that's what they were trying to do. I think that's why they let him come there immediately, because to them it was like, no, we don't actually have a job for you. But it was like, hey,
but you're still putting, especially America at that time.
In hindsight, terrible.
School shooting is probably the only thing that was on his mind. When you're like, you're the hall monitor, you know what I mean? It's like you put it in. Yeah,
exactly. So in hindsight, terrible idea. I think that's why they gave him a job, though, for that very thing. They were like, hey, because they knew he didn't want to do this full time. You want to go get a business degree, and it was like, hey, while you're getting on your feet, probably, and I'm just taking liberty and imagining, probably so he's not sitting at home alone digesting everything that just happened the last 9 months. They're like, hey, why don't you come here? Basically, do busy work. I think it was good intentions all around, and it was like,
oh no, I'm not saying. I'm just saying it shouldn't befall a school. No, exactly. The friend. Do you know what I mean? Like, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that the things that happened weren't done with the best of intentions. I'm just saying it's like sometimes you need a professional.
Yes,
get a veteran to hang out with this guy.
Absolutely,
right? It's like you know what I mean. Like, and of his war, I would say, probably as well, because like even connections between veterans of different wars, it's not even necessarily the same all the time. You know what I mean? Just because the personal experience, it's not the same fighting in a jungle in Vietnam as it is fighting in the mountains and plains of Afghanistan. Exactly. Where like you hear a crack, that could be the last thing you fucking hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
in hindsight, it's. I mean, if it wasn't so sad, it would be, in hindsight, it's comical.
Yeah.
Almost, right? Yeah, it's like we brought him back for the best reasons, right? Yep. And it'd be like if a guy from a nuclear submarine went and got a job after deployment with his uncle who runs a nuclear power plant. It's just kind of like, woo, if things go wrong, this is how we'll deal with the fault, like the literal radioactive fallout. But yeah, no, it's terrible. But it's kind of like what Tim Dillon says. He's like, Home Depot did this thing like a year or two ago where it was supposed to be like a wholesome news story. And it was like this guy's like son with like, it's like a 1 in a trillion disease where it's like an adolescent with ALS, just like a true, like, is there a real God kind of disease. And they were like, their insurance wouldn't let them bill a wheelchair. So they went to Home Depot, and Home Depot provided, like, at a discount, the materials to build their own. And it's okay, good intentions, sure. But like Tim Dillon's like, no, that's not a good story. He's like, the fact that this child with ALS can't get a fucking wheelchair. And it's kind of like that, right? It's like this great, hey, you graduated here, you just served your country. Why don't you come here? Here's some busy work and like a little bit of money. I know you're trying to get your degree from wherever in Atlanta. And it just ended up with me looking at the news and seeing an aerial shot of a bomb squad going through my high school. And I was like, and then so, the next day, Mr. Spellman was like, I lied to you all and I'm sorry. and it was like just
Exactly,
nothing.
and that's the other part. Right?
Yeah.
He's probably got 9,000 parents down his throat. Like, what the
Like,
hell?
what the
Why
fuck?
do I have to stay home and take care of these little fuckers?
Yeah, and then it's on like WSB that it's
Yeah,
like why that
exactly.
not only that, it's like why didn't you tell us that there's a bomb squad there?
And not to mention, like, we actually had one of our friends' mothers was one of the anchors for one of the most popular
Oh yeah.
morning news.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so like, could you fucking imagine? Could you imagine if like
He's
that shit
like,
had happened to
"Honey,"
our class?
he's like, "Honey, did you
Because
know this is
I
going?"
remember her bringing things up about like the school and like in the morning when we would watch, right? So
Yeah.
it was like, oh my god, man, you're like, what?
Fucking A. That was a
Fucking
weird
weird.
thing. I'm trying to just think of like other odd things. I remember
Because
9/11.
like
Go
you have
on.
to understand that the American school, especially where we lived and the level we lived at,
Hmm.
is very unique amongst people in the entire world. Like I've lived in 3 different countries. When
Yeah.
I explain some of my experiences in high school to people, they look at me. They're like, "It's like a fucking movie," and I'm like, "Sometimes it was. Sometimes it is exactly." But it wasn't like a movie because that's what it's like. It was like a movie because we were emulating movies and we
Hmm.
had the resources to do so. That's
Yeah.
why. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Uh-huh.
We all grew up on American Pie. So
Yep.
how the fuck do we want to party? We want to
Vegas.
go to like someone's big huge house when your
House.
parents are away for the weekend, and we want to
Everyone's gonna
like
lose their virginity. We gotta have red
exactly
solo cups. There's gotta be
right,
the live band. It's gotta be
exactly.
like some 41 or something. Like,
Ooh. And we're gonna do this like, well, I don't think we ever got that far, live band wise, but like, yeah, like in my day, we had like at one party a fucking Halo like on the side of a 2-story house, like Halo LAN party beside a
huh,
pool party, beside a barbecue with like firing guns and shit in the back. Like it was a
that's
fucking,
amazing.
it was a fun ass party, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That is true though, right? Because we grew up on those movies and it was like, "Oh, we're not doing it right."
Exactly. So we wanted to emulate. We thought that was what it was.
That's what the party
Um,
is. Yeah.
we saw, and because they're a facsimile of American culture, like a lot of those, like if you take American Pie, basically, literally, it was people, it was writers. They sat in a room and they're like, okay, what is like the American like high school experience? And they probably like cherry picked from 100 people's experiences and then compressed them all into this one like super
And
crazy
then
thing.
dialed that compression up.
Exactly. And so we saw that and we were like, oh, well, like we have to do that.
We have
Like,
to.
do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like
exactly.
this very basic monkey see, monkey do. Right?
Right?
Yeah.
It's watching
Yeah.
like the 1996 US Olympic basketball team, the quote unquote dream team with Kobe
Hmm.
Bryant, rest in peace, with Larry
Hmm.
Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
It's like seeing that a
Yeah.
team that could it wasn't just like an NBA championship team. It was the champion of NBA champions. It's like
Exactly.
looking at that and saying, how come we're not putting on that performance? And it's like, well, you're a middle school church league.
Mm.
It's not Michael Jordan getting alley oops from Larry Bird, right?
Right.
It's a bunch of retards with
But
bowl cuts and
but the
braces.
thing is, the settings all look the same
Yeah.
because like like we're people with wealth and money.
Hmm.
We had
The
we had
pool, the
a
house.
stadium.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, no, even our school. Our school
Yeah.
is fucking like when I tell my like fiance about like the school high school I went to, she's seen it. She's like, "What the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
What the
Oh,
fuck is
yeah.
this? This is like a university."
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh,
for
oh, St.
people.
Pius was
Like, do you know what I
incredible.
mean?
It was incredible.
Like, why do you need a $9 million football field? It's like, well, the Bulldogs like to practice there. It's like literally that was it. That was
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I remember
Because we can.
we had the
Yeah.
AstroTurf. We had that special, that new, but it is now like a national common. We were
Right.
the first, I think we were the first like
We were.
actual like usable field in the nation
We were.
to have what you everyone now just says is normal. But what it
Yeah.
was is it was the fake grass with those like
With the
rubber
rubber pellets. Oh, I
microscopic
fucking
pellets.
hated that
They
shit.
were
I
terrible.
hated it,
They're
man.
But we had it
You
before
slide out on
anything.
that
They
shit.
came,
Ugh.
they put it on our field, and I remember the owner of the Falcons came and they checked it out, and then that went into the Georgia Dome. But it was like, yeah,
Well,
that was
yeah. Bulldogs were practicing there even when I was like in the off season when I was there.
yeah,
They would use the field while we
yeah,
were away at summer school. That's like you'd have 2 days sometimes. Like I wasn't even in football, but you knew because like you still hung around school in the summer for some reason sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, like they'd fucking come. I don't know how often. It became more frequent, I think, as time went by. But like before they had their field, they used ours.
Yeah. And it was, and I remember being in high school because it was an American Pie, thinking that I was like being robbed of something. And in hindsight, I'm like, man, how the
Oh, that
fuck did
was it,
my
man.
I'm like, in the hindsight, I'm like, how did my parents and my teachers not just backhand me and say like, you ungrateful fuck,
Well, you don't
right?
realize it until you're talking to people who've never
Who never
experienced it
had
before,
it.
and they look at you like you're like, "Are you fucking like psycho?" Like,
This
you
is
know
where
what I
like
mean? You're
this is
like,
where you
"Am
grew up.
I? Am I?"
Yeah,
So, like, yeah, is
exactly,
this crazy?
exactly.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
kind
like
of
everyone
is.
has like their own car. You know, me, I'm like, oh, I have like our used Jeep, but it was like, no, I had my own set of wheels at
Right.
18. And it was like, that's insane.
And the thing about you is like, I don't think that your parents couldn't afford it. I just don't think your parents were those type of people.
No,
Do you know
they
what I
were,
mean? Like
yeah,
there
they
was
were very
different groups
much,
of people at our school who
yeah,
like were given different things.
yeah.
Definitely,
I mean,
absolutely.
some kid, yeah, brand new like SUVs, and I'm like, how come I have this old '93 Cherokee? And it's like,
Because we have it.
and in hindsight, it's like, be grateful for the fucking wheels you have,
Because it
dick.
cost me $80 in insurance. You know what I mean?
To
It's like,
keep it running. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't care that the air conditioner and the radio don't work. Like,
yeah. Because your dad realizes he's like, why do I want like
why do
to buy you something expensive? You're gonna crash it. Then my premiums are gonna go up, and
so
then
here's this
you know what I mean?
'94 Cherokee.
How do I? What am I getting out of this deal? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
Cherokee. Yeah, yeah, that thing that didn't have air conditioning. The
Because
radio,
when you think about it, all you're doing is increasing the chances that your son and or daughter is going to end
fuck
up
it up.
with a child possibly before, because you know what I mean, that you
Oh
get
yeah.
that extra mobility, that extra it's a rolling bedroom when you're
Yeah,
a
yeah,
teenager, dude.
yeah.
Like,
Not that Jeep. That Jeep probably that Jeep
I mean,
probably
not that you
lowered the chance.
couldn't, but it was,
That Jeep
you
lowered the
did, it was
chances of
on you, man. It was like, wow, like fuck, man, you pulled it, not the car, not the, it was literally a box, a maroon box.
a
I remember
maroon box.
we
Yeah,
rolled around in that thing.
yeah, a maroon
We
box.
used to
If
go
you
by
played that, then
the
it was like
little
congrats.
there was like a small airport near the high school. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
John and I used to wait until there was like like a jet was moving, and we'd like drive past it just so we could feel the engine like push the car into the next lane.
Oh yeah. You gotta love
Uh,
that perfect square Jeep.
oh yeah, yeah,
That thing, I don't know how I never died on 85 with like a simple wind gust because you'd
right.
catch it. There was no aerodynamics. It was just
No,
no. You would
everything.
feel it. You would you'd have to overcorrect. You'd
Right.
really have to just fight the wind.
Yeah.
And yeah, no air conditioner. Heater worked just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the roof, it was like the fabric was
Yeah. I
disconnecting
know
from the
it's
ceiling as
droopy.
the years went on. So it would just we'd open the windows and the whole thing would flap. It was like a sailboat. And then I remember because we had a iPod and you would plug in an MP3 cord to the iPod and the MP3 connected to a cassette tape, and you'd
Yeah,
put
I
the
know.
cassette inside
Yeah.
and you could play
And
your
you,
iPod. It was real rocket
how long
science.
did the styrofoam cup tape to the dash last?
That actually lasted a very long time because
Yeah, I figured it lasted all through our high school career.
I think we wrapped
So,
the entire thing in duct tape.
yeah, it was like duct tape
Yeah, it was duct
in a
tape
cup, and then it was
to
just
the
like doof, like
yeah.
right on there.
Well, I
And
think
yeah,
we also wrapped the cup in duct tape. So this whole thing
possibly
was just
maybe,
like
but yeah,
right
it
like
was
a
just
duct tape wallet. The whole
yeah,
thing was constructed.
yeah.
And I
Well, because I
remember
remember, yeah, John had a one of the really early MP3 players, like the
mhm.
non iPod ones, and it had like little
Yeah.
cassettes that you could load,
Yeah,
preload.
those little
Yeah,
tiny the little tiny
the
ones.
blue one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he used to just like dump that in the cup and like pop the tape in, and we'd like listen to
It was
fucking.
it was a Walkman. That was his, right? John had the Walkman.
It could, yeah, it could have been a Sony. Like it was in that time where there was a lot of MP3 players and stuff,
Yeah,
but he always
before
had like unique shit. So
yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah, it was John, of course. John was always a rocket scientist with that shit.
and then
Yeah.
like the fucking blow dart, the
Oh,
blow gun.
Jesus. That's in the other room. Hold
Oh
on.
my god.
Hold on.
Oh man.
found it.
Nice. Fuck yeah. Old memories.
Yeah, this motherfucker.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now I don't know what to do with it.
Nah,
I
hang it
don't
on
know
the
what to do
wall.
with my hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember the radio broke when I was a senior because I remember listening to "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
and I was listening to that with my friend Harry. This had to have been like fall 2008, right before it was like 10 minutes before class started. Dun, 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 dun. And I remember thinking, I think the trailer for Hangover had already come out, so this was probably spring.
Okay.
But it was Mike Tyson, right, punching Stu.
Sure.
So of course, I emulate Mike Tyson, and I punch the radio as hard as I can. Buttons pop out, and it was stuck on 87.9 from there forward.
I'm surprised the whole thing didn't give up. Like, I'm surprised you didn't punch the fucking dash off at that point. Like,
yeah, I'm surprised the hit didn't just break everything.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
just shuts down in the middle of the street.
well, that fucking Jeep, dude. I remember Charlie was driving us to because John graduated and Charlie was 2 years behind him, and so I remember Charlie would drive me and Pat, and I remember there's this one day on I-85, which is just, I mean, even that I look back at it, and I'm like, the fact that I drove on that 45 minutes a day to and from, and I'm still alive, that's like playing Russian roulette.
Insane.
That's because when there were accidents there, they weren't accidents. They were like fatalities.
Yeah.
Yes, that was right. That's a 12-lane highway.
And like 1/5 of the cars were just like worse than the Jeep was. You know what I mean? Just insane. Like fucking just missing like
everything,
parts and doors and shit, and like a
lot of trash bag windows. Yeah,
absolutely.
And because it's Atlanta, it's also, as you get closer to Atlanta, like the traffic gets like poorer, like actually like less like wealthy.
Yeah.
But then there's also people driving out from the suburbs, so like mixed in with like the shitty like multicolored panel doors, or like brand new like Mercedes Benzes and like an Aston Martin every once in a while between like the Jeep and a van.
The last time I went to Atlanta, I think it was I want to say it was like my aunt's wake or something. I rented like a black 5-liter Mustang to drive around Atlanta with, and so because it was actually cheap as shit because it was a stick. So like they were like, oh okay, like nobody wants to rent this for the most part, like people who just come. So like, here, you can have it. It's like fucking, it was like the same as like an economy car. And anyways, I'm like driving around Decatur probably, and like, again, I think it was off of I-85, but like I know what you're talking about, where that like, yeah, parts of the city like come together like a river. You know what I mean? You ever seen those like nature documentaries where like part of like the silt? Yeah. It's exactly like that. That's a horrible way to say it.
Water where it's like, and you can see the river.
That's what I-85 is like, right? Just all around the fucking.
You can see all the Sugarloaf and St. Ives and St. Marcos. You can see where all these private country club traffic mixes with like the projects.
Exactly.
And it stays divided.
I was like heading down. I just like passed like some fast food or whatever, and I'm stopped at a red light, and I look across, and it's like another kind of, I guess I dressed like kind of upper middle class or whatever. It is another like black guy, upper middle class, but in the exact same black Mustang 5-liter, and we like pass each other, and we're just like, yeah. It was the most like fucking hilarious moment in Atlanta traffic. That was like cool and peaceful and like not a fucking issue, that I'd ever been in. It was hilarious.
I remember Charlie driving us, and I remember we're driving, and it's like, that 7 to 7:45 a.m. just death rat race that is I-85. The way the sun's rising, you're just blinded. You're in 6 lanes of traffic. Can't see. You're in this crawling or like F1 racing. Like none of the others,
But
right?
like all in the same like 5 lanes. Like
Yes,
these two
yes.
lanes, F1, these three,
Oh
with
yeah,
everybody trying to get off and shit.
yes.
Yeah.
Trying to join the F1, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't even that everything slowed and everything sped together. It was
Fast
dead.
on left.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
dead
no, I know.
stop.
I know.
Like you could get off the car and like turn around and like tie your child's shoe,
Right.
and next to you was boom,
Yeah,
boom,
you
because
literally
I
have to
remember
launch it to
I
get
remember your
into there.
car you could feel there was,
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
passed, there was a slight vacuum in air, but not even like the Jeep,
Yeah.
any car. You could be in a big ass Suburban and
Right. Yeah,
it
yeah.
would in slow motion. So a car would pass and whatever you were in would move towards where that thing passed.
Yeah.
Granted, maybe a tenth of an inch, but enough that
You
you'd
felt
feel
it. Yeah. Go down the line.
and an 18 wheeler would go by and you'd be like, boom,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
boom,
I know.
boom.
It has like the worst setup for
Worst setup.
flow.
And yeah, and people are
Fucking
trying to get
awful.
off into that.
Yeah, I know.
I want a part of this. So they're going zero to just you just hold your
Right.
foot on the. But I remember, so we were going one morning, and I remember like it was coming to like a stop, or no. I remember no, it came to a stop, and I remember the Jeep wouldn't start up, and I remember Charlie was like, "What?"
Stalled out.
Charlie was like, "What the
Fuck.
fuck?" And like so cars start flying by us in all directions and I'm just like sitting there and I'm closing my eyes and I'm like, well, at the time I was like, well, I'm 17. I was like, what have I seen in my life? And I'm like, well, I did get to kiss a girl when I was 16. I'm like, okay. And like, and then like he got it started up again and I remember I was like, whew, thank you God in heaven. And I remember I was like, Charlie, can we like get off 85 in case it happens again? And he was like, nah. And I was like, okay. And like, because it wasn't
yeah, he's like, no, we want to get there. Like,
yeah.
I love, like, don't get me wrong, I love the city of Atlanta, but whoever the fuck planned it out needs to be like dug up, shot, and
that's the thing
buried again. Like,
the thing is I
fuck
think
those people. Holy
thing
shit.
is I think most of the people that did plan Atlanta were burned and shot in the
Oh
1860s.
god. Like
I think General Sherman did that.
I feel like it's fuck. I've explained to people because like I live in Toronto. Toronto's just a grid city. You know where south is because that's the lake, and there's a gigantic tower that you like can see for miles and miles and it's like you know what I
It's
mean.
the N Tower, right?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest, like
One of the biggest in the world.
third or fourth now because there's other, but like one of
Yeah.
the biggest freestanding.
All
And it's
those
been there
freaking oil countries taking our tall
since the
buildings.
70s or
It's massive.
something. Like they
It's
built
massive.
it.
The CN Tower is insane.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just like a communications tower. It doesn't do anything other than give us good reception. But so like it's super easy once you get the flow of Toronto to like know in your head exactly where you are mentally. You know what I mean? If I give you an intersection or whatever. But Atlanta, it's like what? Like because like you think you're like on a road, but unless you know where the other road is, like in relation to where you are, you don't know how far down the road you are because there's no grid. It just kind of shows up
Yeah.
like Peachtree intersecting with like another Peachtree,
Yeah,
or
Peachtree
like
Industrial with like Peachtree
right,
Parkway,
exactly,
Avenue,
exactly.
Road,
And I'm
Drive.
pretty sure there's one that actually circles back onto itself. Like it's
Uh-huh.
fucking ridiculous.
And then some of them they don't even merge.
Right.
Some of them just change names at a
Or they
certain mile
split.
marker.
Like they'll start one here, and then you'll hit like Buford Highway, and then it'll like continue like 2 miles north. You're like,
Well,
what the shit is
yeah.
going on?
I don't
Yeah.
I don't mind the ones that all merge on Spaghetti Junction
That's
because it's
fine.
like
That's
they're
fine because
all
you know
coming
where you're
in
going.
to
Yeah.
one. They're all coming into
Yes.
85. Are you going
Yes.
north or are you going south?
Right.
Peachtree Industrial was Peachtree Industrial for like 85 miles.
Right.
And then, not even as you got near Spaghetti Junction, it was still a couple miles from there. It just changed names. Not at a break,
No
not
warning.
at a split, not even at a hill or a stoplight. There's just like a mile marker.
In between two like red lights at some point.
It's just at one point you're driving and
Yeah,
it's
I know.
just, when you're driving into a new state and your GPS is like, welcome to Delaware.
Right.
And it's like there's not a street sign. You're just like, oh, I've crossed the area on the coordinates of this planet. I have crossed into a new jurisdiction. Welcome to just in the middle of a highway. You're like, oh,
yeah, you might have a sign a couple
maybe
miles in,
and even that is not completely accurate, right?
No.
Peachtree Industrial just, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's but there is a massive road that just at some point you're just no longer there. And there's no, you are now on X highway.
No.
Just signs start popping up that just say X highway.
Right.
And you're like, when did I merge? And you're like, oh, we just right.
And it wouldn't be so bad if it was like a completely straight road that went, you know what I mean? That would
Oh,
be
you can't
fine
have
because
that.
you'd
You
be
can't
like,
have
I'm
that.
still going east, so it's like whatever, you know. But
No,
like, no, it doesn't work that way.
no. And
We're gonna change direction and name.
there's a
Fuck you.
there's almost a poetic disaster to it, right?
Mm,
Because when you see something planned out like a grid, even Manhattan, for as crazy as it is, pretty gritty.
mm.
Except for, and I don't mean that as like gritty, but like
I understand what you mean.
GRID dash
GRID.
Y
Yeah.
dash Y gritty,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's except for maybe like lower Manhattan, where you can see where everything's built on like landfill and like dredged up land, where it's like they kind of, you can see where it expanded piecemeal,
yeah.
right? You
Right.
get all these, right? Maybe you get a, whatever. But as opposed to like a centrally planned thing, you can almost, what it is it's very like Cancer-esque, and that it
Mm,
just grew when growing was necessary,
right.
and then when growing was not necessary and or possible, the growth stopped and there was zero planning for the next thing. It's
Mm.
just, that's the event horizon. Who
And it
knows
was
what's coming?
also, and you also have to look at the like area. It was also really fucking woodsy. Like there's trees everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's hilly. So
Yeah.
it's like it's super awkward to build out of Atlanta. I feel that the whole
Yeah.
area of Georgia is an awkward place to like try to grid,
Yeah.
because like you would end up, it would almost end up being like San Francisco, where they had to like cut into hills and just to make a fucking road go straight, you know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, so, and but the hills aren't that high, so it's just really awkward. Like that's what I noticed. It's always like you're always going up and down, and it always seems like next to you is like a jungle, but
Mm-hmm.
on the other side is like a strip mall, but like you can't see it.
Yeah.
It's
Do you
just
remember?
like the
Yeah.
thickest of
It's
forest,
this
right?
odd, yeah, and the entire time in the distance, there's just like the haze of Atlanta, this
Well,
like metropolitan
yeah,
with the busiest air at the time, the busiest airport in the world. But
right.
next to you is like Bubba's Grits and Shrimp,
Exactly.
and then there's what looks like woods that have not been touched in 410 million years,
When we used to go
and a
up to
Civil War
like
monument.
Chase's like place, he lived in like one of those, like a neighborhood like yours was in Atlanta, like but no golf or anything, so it was just forest. And I remember we went up there for like Halloween, and we're egging people, but we were like fucking guerrilla fighters, man. Like, because there was no way anyone was gonna catch us because
Yeah,
everything was so heavily forested.
yeah.
We would roll up behind people's yards and just hail, those big fucking cathedral windows people in
Mm-hmm,
Atlanta have.
mm-hmm,
We
yeah.
would just like start at the top and make our way down. And like we sit there for 5 minutes, and by the time they're like, oh, because they can see us because we're like 1,000 yards away, in
It,
darkness, and then we just like dash away, and there's no way because nothing is grid. Everything is like a weird tree.
a weird roots, again,
Exactly,
very
exactly. So you would
cancerous.
just be dumping, and there's nobody has like fences usually.
Yeah,
So you just be fucking booking it across people's
yeah.
backyards, and their backyards are so big that even if their lights go on in the back, they don't even reach you.
No,
And so you're just like running around all five
and
little assholes throwing.
yeah. Yeah, and right, and it's not even that the roads in Atlanta are also like squiggly. It's like
Yeah,
they themselves are like 5-lane roads.
exactly.
So it's like you're in like what looks like a pristine like 18th hole,
Hmm.
and then like 35 feet away, there are like 5 MARTA buses
Yes,
and like someone panhandling and saying like "Bless you, sir." Like
exactly.
if that wasn't a lesson in like urban warfare of just how
Right,
messy a civil war would get,
right.
it's like
Well, that's why
go
like
to
Atlanta
Atlanta.
is impossible to take, right? It's
Yeah,
not a city, and I don't think it would be a city that could easily be sieged by numbers.
which is why in the Civil War they just burned it because they're
Exactly.
like, we're not
No.
taking
Oh
it,
yeah. No,
right?
I'm aware.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
Hiroshima. They're
aware.
like, we're
I'm
not
aware.
taking it.
Exactly.
Just get rid of it.
That's why I'm moving to Japan.
Moving to Japan because
Yeah.
you can't take it.
I'm gonna
Not a bad,
stockpile
not a bad
guns in the
tactical move.
mountains.
Not a bad tactical move.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, things about that Jeep, dude, would just back to the Jeep. I remember, but on
Yeah.
that day, I remember it shut down like 4 or 5 separate times,
Yeah.
and I was just like, we're gonna die. And then it kept working towards the end, and it was just fine after that. I mean,
Well, because like old cars do shit like that sometimes. They're just
they
like
have attitudes.
fuel pumps just like not quite making that connection or something. You know what I mean? That probably could have been
Just
it.
a little bit of an attitude. Yeah, that's what they have. Just a little bit of an
I've done that
attitude.
before.
Yeah.
Like
And yeah.
turned too hard left and like a sensor went loose and the whole thing just shut down. I'm like, oh, okay, fun.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I remember my senior year, one of my best friends was next to me in his brand new like Toyota, whatever it was like a pickup.
Mm,
And I remember he came right next to me and I was in the driver's seat with the door open right at the end of the school day, and I had like the door open, it was whatever. And I remember we were in the senior parking lot facing those like Hispanic like apartments, those like minority apartments. You know, there's the fence, hill, road, and there they are. It's like to your left is like the highway, to the
yeah,
right is
yeah,
the
yeah,
football field, and you're
yeah, yeah,
facing.
yeah.
I remember he came up to me and just like he was like he was like gross, and I was like what? And he was holding his hand, and I was like he's gonna show me something gross. But he had unzipped his pants and put his balls in his hand, and he was like, "Look what I found."
Jesus.
And I was like, and the car was it was already running, and I had it in reverse, but had like my foot on the brake, and I was like texting or something on my shitty flip phone, and the door was open, and so it's me in the driver's seat, door open, and
Yeah.
then his truck right there, and he's locked into truck, Jeep, door, and I already have it in reverse, and my foot's just on the brake, so I was like, I'm gonna clothesline this motherfucker for going here my balls, right?
Right, right, right.
Forgetting that I had cut really hard that morning to park.
Uh,
So I floor it. He gets out of the way. I don't know how. He
well,
moved like
because you would have probably pulled the door away from his truck, right? Because you were cocked out.
no. Well, the way it was is well, no. What happened was is the door got caught on his truck
Oh, oh shit.
as I
Okay.
floored it, and completely it
Pulled.
took the handle of the door and touched the front left light on my
Oh
Jeep.
shit.
So I completely almost ripped the door off. It was flattened against the Jeep. It was flattened again, like yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah. You bent the hinge out definitely.
in gouged his truck across all the panels. And I remember everyone just went, oh,
Yeah.
and I put it in drive and I went right back into my footprint
Mm.
and I got out and I remember I just took it and and this is probably when I was like powerlifting the most in my life and I was like a meathead. And I remember I took it and I just pushed as hard as I could. And they're like, Tommy, Tommy. And I pushed and I just remember it made these like two distinct, it went clunk and I got it back halfway and then it went clunk and I slammed it shut and it wasn't even lined up.
No,
I
not
just,
at that
and I
point.
just like, I kind of gave it a couple just like,
Yeah.
and it stayed there and it never opened again.
Right. It was probably just like stuck in the latch, and then the pressure from it wanting to pull back out made it.
Probably, I don't know, probably pretty safe. I mean, tactically,
Yeah.
never opened again. So
As long as like there's no, yeah, as long as that hinge doesn't let go,
I
it
mean,
might pop open.
short of like welding, it was stuck. And I remember
Yeah.
that. Luckily my friend, his dad was cool and was like, "You don't have to pay for it. Like you're a dipshit." And he was like, "I imagine your dad's gonna kill you anyway for destroying the
Yeah.
Jeep." And I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Well, because I got the door shut, I just didn't say anything for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And I remember Patrick, because I would drive him home,
Sure.
obviously, to our home
Yeah.
where I lived with him. So and I remember I was just like, "Don't say a fucking word." He was like, "Whatever, man. I
You're
want
like
no."
always parking it passenger side away from the house, like
Always
under the
kind of,
basketball net.
always
Yeah.
just kind of like weird, not saying anything.
Yeah.
And in the morning, I would kind of like circle around it, and then I would like hop in over the passenger seat, and you had to
Right.
climb over the armrest. And I'd always just kind of do it quickly,
Yeah.
and the window wouldn't go down either. So you just
Yeah.
no, the window went down. Sorry, the window went down, but everything else about it was fucked. And I remember finally, I think like my dad went over to it at some point and was just looking at it. He was like having a beer, and he was just kind of walking around. And I remember he went and like pulled on it, and it was like it like it like popped,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he just kind of looked at it. And I think he came inside and said, "What happened?" And I just told him, and he goes, "I'm not buying anything new." And I said, I'm fine with it. And he said, okay. So I took it. And for a second time, I think I needed his help. And we like,
Pop it back.
and like got it back in. And he was like, well, I would reckon you just don't open that door. And I was like, I haven't for a couple
Look
of
for a new
days.
one, yeah.
And he was like, you can buy a new one. And I was, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to college in like 8 weeks. And Patrick was like, yo, I want a new door. And I was like, sucks to suck. I'm just like,
Patrick, poor fucking Patrick.
poor Patrick. So he just had
The nicest one.
the nicest one of us all. You know what? I don't
Yeah.
feel bad because he's tall and handsome and is engaged.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's tall, handsome, smart, has a good job, and is engaged to a beautiful woman. So I have no sympathy retroactively for him. As I am shorter, I will never.
Nice,
Yeah, that's where being a nice guy gets you. A good job,
because like
good
I had
education.
the four of you like pegged as like, because like I was slightly old. I was like a teenager, and I would have been like, look at these kids. You know what I mean? At that time, like Charlie was like close enough at that point, but like yeah, you and Pat is like the kids,
little babies,
the kids, yeah. And all I remember is I have distinct memories of the three of you. He's like Charlie. I saw more of because he was at Pi as well. We were there too.
Yeah.
But with you, it was mostly like when I'd come to your place and John and I would play like PlayStation or something. Yeah. And you're like hovering behind us, like, I want to play, you fuckers. Like,
yeah, trying to prove myself at something, like,
or just like saying some like bullshit, or like,
I remember
just like some smart.
I'd always swear at John,
smart ass shit, and like John,
felt like,
shut up, Tom. Like, yeah,
I remember John was always very cool, and I remember like I'd always try to try to almost like prove yourself.
Yeah.
I'd walk in, you guys be playing video games, and I'd be like, you guys won't be saying anything, and I'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Kind of look at me and be like, but like I had to like prove myself. Like, I don't have a car, I can't drink, I don't have a girlfriend.
Right. And you probably heard us talking about all this shit, like, oh, it's a someone's party, or like,
so
bullshit,
I'd
right?
swear,
I get it.
Fuck.
Yeah. Like, but then I remember specifically just Pat, like I stayed over one time and got up in the morning, and Pat's like, you want some coffee, Rob? I'm like, yeah, all right, man. He just like made me a full pot of coffee. But I was like, who is this kid and why is he making me? Like, how does he even know how to do this, right?
Because he's an angel.
Yeah, he was like super sweet.
My little brother got all of the sweetness that Charlie and I didn't. Yeah. John had all of his own. John was wonderful. And Patrick still is wonderful. Charlie and I didn't get any of the sweetness.
Yeah, you guys are more the curmudgeons.
Yeah.
More grumpy. Like,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, I think I was an asshole. And I don't say that in some like rose-tinted glasses, like I was the. No, I say that in like shame. I'm like, I was an asshole.
I think it just comes from like being in a family of more than one. Like, because it's hard to like. Everybody has their own personality, but like it's hard to necessarily shine when you have like older brothers or older siblings, and they're all like you guys were close in age, right? Mm-hmm. So it's almost, yeah, like I get why everybody had to have their own way of doing things, and John benefited from being the oldest, so he could just like be who he was, you know what I mean? And just like, man, fuck you, man.
Literally, what he would, John would just play himself out.
Get the fuck out of my room. I'm gonna play you out.
yeah, seriously, leave. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Get out of my room.
Yeah. Sitting on the floor, like,
yeah.
Fucking Claypool playing in the background.
I was about to say, yeah, with his custom Claypool shirt.
Yeah.
His Tommy the Cat.
This is his. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Oh, really?
Left this here when he came to visit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, it's mine now.
Mine now.
Yep. It is ratty as fuck, and as soon as it gets like literally as it falls off of me, I will cut out the like logos and patch them on a jacket.
Good. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I remember that's where he introduced. I vividly remember like going into his room and him introducing me to Primus and being like, "Have you ever heard this?" And it was Tommy the Cat.
Yeah.
And like, Tommy the Cat's my name, and I say unto thee, down. And I remember he and I would just laugh hysterically because it was like, that's not what a bass is supposed to sound like, because Les Claypool is I think he's probably still alive.
Still around.
a god, and I, as someone that didn't know anything about music, but I remember he did, was just like, how the fuck is this guy playing a bass like that? And I just remember thinking,
Mhm.
like, I vividly remember he and I just sitting there laughing, just like laughing and laughing and laughing, because it was like this guy. It's like laughing as you see like Michael Jordan hit like the 30th like 3-pointer in a row, because it's just
Right.
like he's too good. There's almost nothing to do but laugh.
Well, he loved like he loved absurdist shit.
Yeah,
Whether it was comedy or music, he
yeah.
loved that kind of shit. But it had to be like high level. It wasn't like he didn't like garbage.
He he wasn't a hipster in that the only value he put in things is that it
No, no, no.
unknown.
Right.
It had to be unknown, but
It's
it
kind
also
of
had to be
him.
God
He and
tier.
I were similar in that regard. That's why we got along as friends like that, because it was so easy for us to talk. Not like we were like, oh, did you hear? Like we weren't one upping each other. We were like, hey, I know this thing. What
Yeah,
about you? Do you know this thing? And he'd be like, no, I don't. And we would. It was always an exchange of like cool shit that we both didn't know about
yeah,
from each other's background. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But there was never any like, oh, I know this, you know that, or like, no, man. It was just like the best person to bounce ideas and shit off of.
He really was the best man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still get sad thinking about him. I remember it was summer 2008, I think.
Mhm.
Maybe I remember my parents were out of town, and I had acquired a Gatorade bottle full of vodka, like an adult.
Mm.
And I remember I was sitting there in the kitchen, looking at the oven light, waiting for it to hit midnight, and it wasn't July. Was it Veterans Day? Maybe it was July 4th. I don't remember what it was. It was one of like America.
Mhm.
When's Veterans? Veterans is the fall,
I
right?
don't know.
Doesn't matter. I
We
think it
have
was
Remembrance Day, which is
no,
November 11th.
yeah, no, yeah, right,
Last
yeah, yeah. It was whatever it was. It was so I think it was July 4th. I was
Mhm.
waiting for it to turn July 4th, and I remember he came down. And I was like, "What you doing?" And I was like, "Waiting to celebrate America." And John was like, "What's in that bottle?" And I was like, "Vodka." It was like a big bottle, like a
Mm.
32-ounce Gatorade. And he was like, "You gonna drink it all?" And I was like, "No. Do you want to help me?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "What are we doing to celebrate America?" And I had pulled up on the computer in the other room. I had pulled up Battlefield 1942, and what I wanted to do, I had no intention of anyone joining me. I thought everyone was asleep.
Mm.
And I remember I was sitting there, just like sitting at the counter, just like looking at the clock, 11:58, 59, midnight. And I went in, and it was, if anyone that's ever played Battlefield 1942, it was one of like the Pacific Island maps. It was like I forget what it is. Tobruk Island. I think that was the level. This video game's like 15 years old at this
Yeah,
point as of
I
this
understand.
story,
Yep.
and it was just a shitty game. But you could do like 2 player, where someone flew the fighter jet, the like whatever, and
Hmm.
someone sat in the back with the 50 cal.
Yep.
And he was like, "What are we doing for like? What are we gonna celebrate?" And I was like, "We're gonna celebrate like World War II." He was like, "All right." And I just remember him and I just getting shit faced and sitting next to each other, playing on the computer. I was flying around. He was like gunning down like the Japanese Zeros.
Yeah.
And I remember he was like, "I know where mom and dad's wine is." So like after we tore through the vodka, John went and got like a bottle of wine, and
Jeez.
I remember he had 2 cigars, and so we like clipped the cigars, and then we were like, we walked down to the road where we lived on at like 3 in the morning, pissed drunk, drinking out of passing a bottle of wine back and forth to each other. And I don't know anything, so I'm smoking, I'm inhaling like the cigar shit, and I'm getting sick, I'm getting nauseous
Yeah,
and
man.
queasy. And I remember we walked to the end of the road, and I remember like we got to the end. I remember I just threw up, and I like projectile vomited like all over a stop sign. And I remember he was like nice, and I was like nice. And I remember I think he like football spiked the wine bottle, and I remember going home, and the next day was just so it just felt like such shit. But that always sticks out in me as one of my favorite memories with my brother. Is just to me that encompasses John, like him coming down to maybe get like a serving of whatever was for dinner, just a midnight serving, and him seeing me and me being like, no, I'm about to get like blackout drunk, and like without missing a beat, he was just like, cool, can I join? And I was like, yes, you can. And yeah, that's like one of my
You
fondest.
always like, yeah. It's weird, like, cause like you're saying shit that really. now that like it's been years, right, since we met and like all of these things that we did together, but it's weird that like you're telling me this and I'm like they're matching up with like exactly what I was like. He always loved adventure and just like that's what we fucking did, dude. Like
Yeah.
Friday night, because most of us weren't allowed out like Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
Most of us
Yeah.
didn't have any social life. It was like do your schoolwork and da
Yes.
da da. And like
Yes.
then we were allowed out on the weekends, but like it usually started Friday night. And I think your brother used a lot of the time would say he's staying at my place because I lived in Chambly. Like I lived right down, like right near Buckhead, and like all that shit was like really close to me. And I think a lot of people who went to Pius live closer to me than they did like live close to you guys. So he would come like park the Jeep at my place, and we would usually just like chill and like dick around watching like nonsense at my place during the day. And then as soon as it got like 6 o'clock, it's like, all right, let's hop in the truck. Fucking
Yeah.
let's go look for some adventure
Yeah.
shit. And
Yeah.
like there's always somebody having a party or like someone doing something there. And like my aunt and uncle, my aunt was strict, but my uncle was really cool about things. So I was like, don't get caught by the police. Don't drink and drive. Don't like it was like don't not have a
The
good
basics.
time, but
Yeah.
just don't be fucking stupid, man.
Yeah.
And so when John and I went to parties, we would do that. We would drink, and usually we'd cut each other off at like 12:01. And then we like, all right, let's fucking pass out for 3 to 4 hours,
Yeah.
be okay, right? And then like shuffle out amongst all the fucking like passed out bodies and shit. And then we'd like roll back to my place. And then my uncle's like, you guys have fun last night?
Yup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, we always had a good time.
You good for like 15 more minutes?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
I remember when I moved to Maine my junior year. So this would have been like August, September 2007, I think. And
Mm,
I remember I was obviously a new kid and just like fucking hated it. Like didn't want to be there. Just wanted to be back in Atlanta. It was like, obviously in the middle of high school was,
mm.
it doesn't really help with all of like the teenage hormones of just being like,
No,
I
it
fucking don't
sucks.
want to hear, I hate you, mom and dad,
Yeah,
fuck you. And in hindsight, it's like, they're it's getting a better job to provide for their family. But of course, in a self-centered 17-year-old's head,
yeah,
I'm like, fuck you. You are literal Nazis, you know? And but so I remember going up there and like I hated it there. I used to eat lunch in like the bathroom stall because I was like I didn't even attempt to make new friends. I was like I don't even want to, do it. And I was like I
mm,
knew how to do it. I've moved around a lot in my life. I knew how to like go out onto the playground and be like got to make new friends. And like when I put my mind to it, I could do it. But I remember there I was just kind of like I've had enough. I don't want to do it. And so it was like really tough. My little brother like slipped in really fine. Is still friends with a lot of his friends.
yeah,
Um, but I remember I really resisted it, and uh, it was like that fall, I think, maybe like November, December, and I remember like my family or my parents went like up to where one of the lake houses we'd been visiting for 20 years
mm,
at that point. And I remember they went up and like I was like the house is empty, and I remember John being like, "You should throw a party." I was like, I don't want to throw a party because John had taken a year off of college and he'd come home. And I was like, I don't want to throw a party. He was like, man, he was like, look, and we ended up only living there for like a total of 9 months before we moved back into the same house in Atlanta. And then I went back to St. Pius, which was a weird thing. But like, it was at that time, we didn't know that. I thought I was just there forever.
right.
And I was like, I don't want to. I remember he was like, dude, he was like, I know you don't want to be here and you're pissed off, but he was like, just make some friends. It'll make the stay easier.
Mm,
And I was like, yeah, I was like, how do I, like, I don't want to. He's like, well, why don't you just throw a party? And I was like, I mean, I guess I could. He was like, mom and dad aren't here. They're not going to be here for another like 3 days. He's like, how would I just go buy you like 120 something beers and have over a couple friends? And I was like, okay. So I invited over like 4 or 5 friends. And I remember we just got shit faced playing like beer pong. It was like our like American Pie.
right, right.
Girls came over, like people were like hooking up in bathrooms, and it was like I got to live like the American. And I remember it did make the rest of my time there because I remember I made friends, and I remember we got so fucked up that we went we went out at like 4 in the morning, and there are these like really nice like stone, because it's in Maine. There are these really nice like stone walls around these big houses. We
Mm.
went out at like 4 in the morning, and I remember it was like temporary spray pay. It was spray pay, spray
Spray
paint.
paint.
Jesus Christ, I'm having a stroke. But I remember we went out and we just spray painted dicks, just multicolored neon dicks all over all of it. And then we even went to the fire station and spray painted a dick like on the garage. And I remember we came back in, and like the next morning, like everyone left. But I always remember that like for the rest of my time at that high school, I had like a group of friends after that, because it's like I cemented myself as like, I remember they're like, oh, like he's cool. Like we got blackout drunk and
Yeah,
spray painted cocks all over a firehouse. And it like that's like another just like positive story I have of John. He was like, I know you don't want to, but he's like, it's gonna make your time here easier if you just, because he was like, look, mom and dad are gone, and like you and I have already planned on getting drunk.
mm,
So he's like, we're not even doing anything new. And I was like,
right.
that's true. So yeah, I just remember we got drunk, and that's, yeah, I think that was the weekend he introduced me to Aqua Teen Hunger Force. That was the same year he went up and visited you, actually.
Yeah, with the in the rabbit. Yeah,
Yeah. The Wabbit. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That was fucking awesome.
that was a good time. I
Yeah.
remember that. I remember driving home like after we been downtown Toronto. Again, we did like exactly the same thing we did in high school. We got shit faced early, and then we just hung out,
Sobered
waited
up.
till it was okay to go back.
Yeah.
Fucking ended up heading back home with the rising sun. Right. So
Yeah.
it was that. Except like fucking Bubba O'Reilly was on. I'm like hauling down with like fucking 6-cylinder Pontiac. Like, yeah, fucking Baba O'Reilly. You're like rocking on the radio. That was a good time. With him.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. That was great.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah. Yeah. Aqua Teen Hunger Force. What the other one he and I used to watch? Venture Brothers.
Venture Brothers. Yeah,
Venture Brothers. Yeah.
that whole like block of like Adult
Yeah.
Swim was like
Yeah.
fucking amazing at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Those are just some like positive. If you can't tell, I've been thinking of John a lot lately,
yeah.
and those are some things that have just been like positive memories that have just been cemented in my mind. Like
Mm-hmm.
waiting until like, and for no other reason than it was like our own fight club, but like wait for mom and dad to go to bed, and we would watch Venture Brothers. And I
Yeah.
remember he had like this bottle of like Belvedere vodka, and we would take one shot, and then we'd put some like THC in it. We'd like boil it in. And so I remember we'd make this THC tincture out of a shot. And it wasn't enough to get like fucked up,
Okay.
but it was almost like that Keith Moon advice where, right? Is that him? Keith
Uh,
Richardson.
uh, what's
Yeah.
that?
Where he was like, someone was like, how do you, just very bluntly, someone was like, how do you like stayed alive all of these years, basically,
Right.
you know? And he was like, I think is like paraphrasing. He was like, catch a buzz and enjoy the buzz, but don't always be going for the high, because that's what kills you.
Sure, sure, sure.
And I remember John and I would like, that's like before I ever knew who he was, but like in hindsight, I can see that's what we were doing. Is like we didn't, which is very absurd for me, someone that like can't do anything in moderation. I remember, but that was like he and I we'd catch a buzz, and we wouldn't
Mm,
do it every night. We would do it like two nights a week, and we did it for like 6 months or something, where we'd take a shot of vodka, we'd boil in some THC, and everyone John had in this like little glass vial,
mm.
and like droop droop, and we put it in. And it was just there was like the whole like that's also something to say about like drug addicts is like you get addicted to the ritual, not
It's true.
just the.
Yeah.
So we would like we had like these like saucers, we had these like little like teacups, and we'd like measure out shots, and we put them in, and it was like dink dink. And then we'd pull up his like shitty laptop and pull up Venture Bros, and we'd just sip on it, and we just catch a nice buzz. Nothing too much, just a buzz.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe that's just like nostalgia, where you look back at memories and you think they're better than they were. And maybe they were. Maybe if I could go back to it right now, I'd be like, "Yeah, this
I
is
don't
okay."
think it's like okay. I don't think you can look at. You have to look at things as they are, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
your feelings are your feelings, regardless of what like the reality. You know what I mean? You experience
The
what you
present memory is what
experienced.
it is.
Exactly. You experience what you experienced. John experienced, and you guys experienced that thing together. Like the, when I look, because like I also suffer from myself from like, yes, overindulgence. I can't just like,
Mhm.
kind of do something.
Yeah.
Addiction, right? Like
Mhm.
my family has suffered from addiction. My sister's addicted to crack cocaine. My grandfather's an alcoholic. Like my mom's flirted with, like, everybody on my mom's side of the family smoked basically. So like there's a heavy addiction. I smoked for most of my life. I smoked pot. Like I've never done hard drugs only because it's like I know my
I know.
personality and
Yeah.
it
I know.
terrifies me.
Me
That's it.
too. Me too.
Um,
I know it's the end.
so I wouldn't even bother. I don't drink alcohol. Like the amount of alcohol I drink in a year is like fucking like literally less than a 2-4 of beer is
Mhm.
how much I probably drink in a year.
Yeah.
I'll go through like phases where like if a holiday around holiday times and shit like that,
There'll be a couple
I'll buy
nights
a
where
six pack. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And I'll like it'll take me 12 days to get through it.
Yeah.
And those will usually be like sporadic nights. Like one night I'll be like, I'm staying up. I'm gonna game all night till 3 a.m. and I'll have like 2 beers and
Yeah.
a coffee.
Yeah.
Like that's my
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking like,
Yeah.
that's my like big. But like for me, it's mostly weed, right? So
Yeah.
like I might have like 2 beers, one coffee, and like 5 bong rips. The whole that'll be like a 7 hour like
Yeah.
period of gaming
Yeah.
session, and then I'll be like the next day I'll be like,
Ugh.
okay. I don't feel like garbage. Like it's not like I drank all night, but it's like, okay, I'm not gonna do that for a little
Yeah.
bit.
That's how I am right now. There's
And
like
cutting out the cigarettes helped a lot. You don't realize, like, I don't know if you ever smoked or not. Like
no.
I smoked a lot, and like when you realize that most of the hangovers like the cigarettes after a while.
Really
It's not the alcohol.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Like
I've smoked a handful of cigarettes in my life.
it's not even like it's not worth
I
doing.
don't think I've
And the
smoked more
hook
than
is so
10.
bad once it gets set in there. And for me, it was set from like youth, right? Because my mom always smoked around me, grandparents always smoked around me, so I was inhaling that shit. Like I remember my first cigarette. I like took it out of my uncle's pack. It was like I was staying over at his place. It was late. I stayed up late. Took it out of his pack. But I remember that like that like feeling of anxiety you get. You're like, oh fuck, 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 fuck.
Fuck, what did I do?
Cigarettes are great. Like cigarettes create that, and so they quell it, but it's like only temporary. Do you understand? So like for
Mhm.
me, who grew up with people smoking, I inadvertently inherited that like nicotine addiction.
Okay.
So it would cause me a lot of anxiety when I was at my dad's because I usually live with my dad. Nobody smoked there, but I'm like a smoker who doesn't smoke. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like I'm having these like panic attacks and all this shit while I'm at my dad's, and it's affecting like my schoolwork and all of this nonsense. And then when I get back to my mom's, it's like I'm living in that, breathing in that environment. So by the time I was like 13, I think, I remember stealing cigarettes from my uncle and being like, a fucking champ. Like everybody talks about like their first cigarette and they're like, and I like fucking took that
You were
shit,
like,
lit it up, and fucking smoked. It was like, I was like, all right, cool. Like, whoa. Like my head was like, whoa. But like within 20 minutes, I was like, I could go for another one of those. Like
yeah,
it was fucking like that.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
been a struggle my whole life. Like I just not maybe 6 months ago, not even 6 months ago, like fully quit again. And it's like it's fucking hard. It sucks
yeah,
so much, especially if you grew up like having any kind of anxiety or anything like that. It's like fuck,
yeah. That's how
worse.
I am with like beer
Yeah,
or any alcohol. I just stay away from liquor because it's just bad news bears for me. But like
it's
beer,
probably
like
better off.
yeah,
Yeah, I
with
get it,
like
man.
yeah, with beer for me, it's the same as you. There's like I don't know, I'd say like 2 or 3 nights a year for like the
Yeah.
past 5 years, if even maybe two,
Hmm.
where it's like yeah, like it for me, and it's like my big night. It's like I'm gonna play video games all night,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And it's like but even then, I can start to feel it, where
Yeah,
it's like I want another beer, and like I won't touch liquor, but I'll have another beer, right? And I'll get drunk and I'll
yeah, I
enjoy
get
it.
it.
But the next day, I wake up and I'm like kind of shaky, and I'm like, whoo, whoo, like, ooh, and it's like I
Feeling a
feel,
little nauseated.
yeah,
Yeah,
nauseous,
yeah,
sick, everything kind of hurts. I'm a little
yeah,
anxious.
exactly.
I'm like, what did I do last night? Who did I text? And yeah, I'm like, my stomach hurts. Nothing, water doesn't even taste good.
All right.
And what I always note is like the little demon on my shoulder that's like, just have another beer, you'll be fine. And that's when I'm
That's
like, stop.
exactly,
That's when I'm like,
exactly.
kill it now, kill it now. And it's enough that I'll do
Yeah,
it, and then I won't want to touch it for like
yeah,
6 more months. But yeah, man, it's
right.
It's
That's why I always buy like small
yes.
portions. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, don't have it all there. It's yeah, I mean, like, I know what you're talking about. Like, I
Yeah,
vividly
yeah,
remember in college one time just, like, having a couple, like, drinks. Like, it was, like, during, like, a winter break or something. And I was living in the frat house. And I remember it was just, like, a normal day of, like, I think I had work that day or whatever, and I remember I had, like, a couple drinks, and I just remember I was, like I texted, like, my best friend, who's, like, still my best friend, went to middle school, high school with, and, I remember this was like winter 2010, and I remember texting him, and just having like I was like having a couple drinks, and he was like, nice, nice, and I was like, I love a couple of drinks, and I was like, because I just get the feeling of everything's fine, everything's gonna be okay. And I remember he was like, man,
mm,
he was like, that sounds like anxiety. And me being me, I was like, fuck you, I don't have anxiety. I'm invincible. I'm Tommy. I work out. I'm gonna go to med school. Like a douche and like the angel that this individual is. He was like,
mm,
sure, like, all right, it's all right. Like, I know you, I've known you for 10 years at this point. Like, I know this is what you're gonna do. So I'm not gonna fight it. But I always remember that.
sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I always remember that because I was like, you know why I love a couple drinks? And he was like, just, let loose, it's the weekend, it's semester's over, it's winter break. And I was like, no, because I get this wave of everything's gonna be okay. And I remember he was like,
yeah.
did you have a tough day? And I was like, no, just in general.
Shuts their fucking voice down.
I was like, do you just remember? I was like, no, just that general feeling of every day that like life is fucked, society's crumbling, and like I hate myself, and that nothing good's gonna happen, and terror waits behind every door. And he was like, that
Right.
sounds like general anxiety disorder. And I was like, no, you're retarded. In hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that to me, that is like the biggest threat. It's not that I get drunk and I'm like, I feel so good. Let's go fuck hoes. Let's go burn it down. Like Saturdays for the boys. It's
Yeah.
not that. The true insidiousness of alcohol for me is I get a glimpse of everything being okay. And I sort of live in that realm where like nothing's ever okay. And I've just kind of learned to live there. I'm 30. I've been doing
Right.
it for like 20 years now.
Yeah.
To me, that's the danger of alcohol. It's like I get a glimpse of like the Garden of Eden.
So yeah, that's the danger of all like
Yeah.
anything that's like an opiate or like any kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it's yeah because you don't I think it's common in our generation because of the shit we're like living through right now and now because of how little power we have over it. It's just kind of happening.
It
It's
just
just this feels like this ball that's rolling over us and that we're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like I get it. I totally get that. Like
I feel like
we
I'm
have
in a
almost
car
like
going downhill and I'm not driving.
correct. And that's why I think sometimes we see a lot of like extreme reactions to the things that happen is because people are really scared and they don't know what else to do. And
Yeah.
the natural human response to like
Being cornered.
if a herd is being hunted or you feel like danger, it's like scream. You scream at the top of your lungs. You scream
Yeah.
fire. You scream,
You feel like
but
you're being
like,
cornered. It's like
but
turn
right,
and fight.
exactly. And so like sometimes our base human reactions take over for threats that aren't necessarily like next to us.
Or like
It's like
real.
a fight or flight. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But it's literally happening in like we're using software from like millions of years ago. You know when it's like
For
our forest is under attack.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
but like the forest has gotten so big that you couldn't even go to the other side of the forest in a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's so all encompassing and
Yeah.
like everyone's like the forest is burning down, but you're like my forest looks okay, but like everyone says the forest is burning down.
Yeah.
But
It's
like and then this
yeah.
side is also saying the forest is burning down for a different reason, but like
Yes.
do you know what I mean?
Or you're like,
Yeah.
they're engineering the burning down, and I don't want a part of
Exactly,
it.
exactly.
It's like
It's literally two
our
people on either side of the fire blaming others the other side for the
the
fire, but
smoke
like
that's
when
coming in their face.
exactly, but the point is that actually none of us paid attention and we just let this fire happen. Like
Yeah.
let's be real.
And the
Like,
reality is you're gonna die before the fire kills you.
exactly.
This
Exactly.
bonfire lasts for thousands of years. You're gonna die from old age
Right, right,
before this fire kills you.
right.
That's like what I'm grappling with now is like I wonder how much of my anxiety is just being like too overly plugged into like it's a COVID, it's a Trump v. Biden, it's a steal the election, it's a, I gotta go fucking make a difference, versus it's like, control your reality, control those around you, hold the door, diet, take pride in, dress well, take a shower, shave, brush your teeth, set small goals. But man, don't try to like save, don't you can't, you're not going to save the whole forest. It's like, because you're right, we're using software from, it's you, your four cavemen, a couple girls, a couple babies, and you guys got a
Like
fire in the cave and like 3 spears, and you protect that
humans,
spear.
yeah, like humans beyond a group of 50 don't work well together. You
No.
can't go beyond 50 people. Like it's been shown in a lot of different, like there's a reason like army platoons are separated, and
Yeah.
often the guys don't even know each other in their own platoons, right? It's not because like they don't need to know each other. They just
Mm-hmm.
need to know that like your platoon, like your dudes are your dudes, and these dudes are our dudes, but we're still on the same side. Like that's we human beings have worked like that for forever. That's how vassal states were
Yeah.
created. You know, like in vassal regions, that's what they were. They were like, you're on our team, but you're not like our group.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can think of like regiments in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, they're all on the same team, but like even like your special forces and Canadian special forces are on the same team, but
Yeah.
they work for different countries.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. NATO,
so
Warsaw Pact, like,
absolutely. Like if our special forces comes upon your special forces under shit, they're gonna save you, and vice versa. But like they they have their own like areas of effect.
yeah.
If that makes sense to you, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And that's what, for me, I always have to find this like middle ground between, part of me is like, because for years, like, I purposely just like never even, like, not just didn't pay attention to politics or news, but actively would like, nope, not watching that, because I was just like, I'm trying to get into med school. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And after a while, I kind of did feel guilt, because I was like, I do have to pay attention. Like,
Hmm.
because things happen and we look at it in hindsight and we're like, oh, the rise of Hitler, or like whatever, the creation of the 13 colonies. And it's like, it's easy to look at it centuries later and be like, oh, this movement of people. But like, I do have to like be active. Like, you, at the very least, just be aware of what's going on, because otherwise, like, you're going to be led like, like cattle to slaughter. But
Sure. Yeah.
I found, probably being more involved than I ever have been, like the last 4 years, being more involved than I have been in my whole life, I found that there are diminishing returns. There's a point where it's like, hey man, like, that's not your identity, Like, when I laugh at people, because I don't watch any sports. So when I
Hmm.
laugh at people, like, and I'm from New England, which just had like a championship 2 decades of Patriots
Yeah.
football, Red Sox
Yeah.
baseball, Bruins hockey, Celtics basketball. Like, they've just had something that will never happen again. Even that, like, I'd watch and I'd cheer, but I'd purposely never like get too into it, because I'd be watching like a football game with family members and they'd be like, oh, it's so pissed off. And I'll be like, why are you letting, like, that's not physically near you. It's happening in Foxborough. These are people that you don't know, Tom Brady and fucking Teddy Bruschi or whoever. These are
Hmm.
guys that make more money in a year than you or your kids will make combined in a lifetime.
Yeah.
They don't care about you. This isn't actually real. And it's, why are you letting these avatars through space and time can give you very real feelings? Sure, you can
Hmm.
get euphoric, but you can also be, I can't fucking believe they lost. I had friends in college. I'm not going out tonight. I'm not going to the bars. I'm so mad at the Falcons. I'd be like, dude, there are a lot of hot girls and there's like, 25-cent drinks.
Hmm.
Like, we're 20. Let's go seize this. And they'd be like, no, I can't even see straight. And I'd be like, why are you letting that ruin your life? But then here I am looking at something where I'm like, admittedly, I'm like, oh,
Dude.
fuck,
Yeah,
Biden
I get
won.
it.
And it's pissing me off. And I'm like, yo, hit the brakes. I have a podcast where I can text one of my older brother's best friends, in a way, a link to my deceased brother, and I can
Yeah.
talk to him and enjoy this. We can
Yeah.
laugh and tell ridiculous stories, and
Yeah.
then I can close this. I can upload it. I'm gonna go have a hot pocket, a Philly cheese hot pocket. Thank you very much.
Right.
I'm gonna fuck around on some Far Cry 5, maybe FaceTime a friend later. Life is good. Life is
Yeah.
good, and the
It's not
reality,
like
that's what I mean.
it's not the thing that was just set up like this whole like I'm aware of the narrative that has been
Stop
being
the steal.
pushed in the
Yeah.
last like 6 months specifically. And let me guarantee you right now, the last 6 months was not like some epic battle between communism and capitalism. Okay.
No, it was
Your Democrats to the rest of us English speaking Western countries, your
whack people.
Democrats are our Republicans. Do you
Yeah.
understand that? Like
Yeah.
they are not anti-capitalist. They are so they won't even let you have health care. Like that's think about that. Those are your leftists?
Yeah.
Fuck off, man. You don't
Yeah.
have leftists in your country. You
Yeah.
don't. You have like maybe a handful of 5 who
We
are
have Bernie.
senators
We have
who have
Bernie.
very little power other than like starting shit on Twitter.
Token
And like
speeches.
that's it. They don't have real institutional power. Most of them are newer, like on both sides. I'm talking about like Yang, like all of these people are newer politicians. They don't have that like institutional power. All
Yeah.
they can do is like swipe on Twitter. That's their
Yeah.
power right now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And most of them had to like primary people in their own party who were just like Democrats who were so far right that they were like, I can't deal with this old fuck anymore. Like
Yeah.
that's usually where it is. So this idea that like our right, like Ontario right now is under a very, in our opinion, a very far right like prime minister, or not prime minister, minister of our, like our, that would be the governor, I guess, right? Like very like their family has long held business in this country. Like do you remember Rob Ford, that crack
That
smoking mayor?
fucking psychopath. Yeah.
Yeah, his brother is now the running our province.
Really?
Yes,
Jesus
this
Christ.
is what I mean. Like, so, and even he's like, all right, we need COVID closed down. Everybody wear a mask. Like, let's fucking make sure people get money. Like, I'm still unemployed, but I'm still getting 600, $1,600 a month. Like, you know what I mean? Because they're not going to let us go homeless. Because even the right wing realizes if there's nobody to buy our shit, we
Then there's
can't sell
no.
our shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You
Like,
can't
they
have your
get it.
country club if no one's buying your corporation's goods.
Exactly. And if the people can't afford to work there because they like literally can't afford to live in the city anymore, then
Yeah.
who the fuck are you gonna hire?
Yeah. Right.
You know
And
what
then
I
like
mean? The
I
engineer isn't gonna go work at your country club when he loses his job.
when he has
So
nothing. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it
And,
doesn't
and
work that way.
and I see my own cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
where like everyone gets $600 and that was like a $2 trillion package. And I was like, yeah, well, people need some money. And then like as soon as like Biden gets like the certified election on January 6th, he's like, I'm unveiling like a $1.8 trillion thing where everyone's going to get like whatever the number is, $1,100.
Right.
And I vividly remember looking at my phone, and part of me was like, we're just spending all this money we don't. And another part of me was like, you were fine with that 8 months ago, like to myself. Like part of me was like, shithead, you were fine with that just the other month.
But from
And
an
it's
economic standpoint, it actually makes more sense to just keep fun. I know it sounds stupid, like it
yeah,
sounds like you're just giving everybody money, but no, if people fundamentally can't keep working for whatever reason, right?
yeah,
Industries are shut down, like there's still economic collapse after that, are still coming after this. But like if people can't do that, but we still need to keep industry running, we still need to keep these things going, then the logical solution, it's like keeping a fountain running that's like
yeah.
gone off the thing. Okay, let's fucking dump a bunch of
Dump
water into it,
bottled
keep the
water
motor running so that it's oiled.
doesn't destroy.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Or
yeah,
like if you're trying to like resuscitate or like test an engine that
yeah.
has been off or like been had some work done on it, you don't run it through the oil system on the car. You fucking take it off, you run it like doing a blood
Diagnostic.
transfusion,
Yeah,
man. But like sometimes you fucking
you
shit
have
has to
to
go. Like
because the alternative
emergencies
is
happen, man. Like
yeah.
that, to think that this stuff doesn't happen. And
Well,
it's like, and you know what the ironic thing about, like, this is so fucking morbid. The Republican Party, by not addressing COVID properly, lost so many of its voters.
yeah.
Let them die.
Let them
Like,
die
and then wonder why are we losing by a couple 100,000?
because they're actually
Because they're
dead.
dead. Like they didn't get a chance to vote.
Yeah.
They're dead. And they're not dead because COVID is such like, and that's another thing, the misunderstanding of like how this virus works. Yeah, okay, chances are you and me, we get it, we're fine. We might have
Yeah.
some like, depending on our genetics, there might be some like outlying
Get a
shit.
little sick. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There has been some cases of people like having like, some people have lungs basically of a smoker for the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
lives. Some
Mm-hmm.
people can't smell, taste. Like it affects people differently,
Mm-hmm.
but by and large, people are not dying because like it's not like it's treatable.
Yeah.
We know what it takes, but it's like there's too many fucking people in the hospitals. Like that's been our
Yeah,
issue,
that's
right?
it's not that it's impossible, it's just that it's
It's
not
overwhelmed, right?
it's not hard to hold a penny, but it's hard to hold
it's like
100,000 pennies.
it's like everybody needs McDonald's at the same time, but 5 of the 10 McDonald's have shut down or like are not working. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? And so everybody has been forced into 5 McDonald's.
yeah,
So guess what? Not everybody's getting fed. Some
yeah.
of you have to die. And the terrible thing is, it's like people. I remember people talking about like Obamacare death councils.
Mhm.
This is it,
This
man.
is it.
This is your death council. This is your you
This
get to
is
live, you don't get to live.
yeah, and it's
And it was totally preventable.
yeah,
I mean, like I like business. I like the ability of people who are good at, who make good shit to be able to make money off of it. I have nothing against people being rich,
yeah,
any shit like that.
sure.
But the way you guys deal with your fucking healthcare, it's like we realized a long time ago, buy wholesale, buy in bulk, buy it like
Mhm.
you're going to Costco. Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Don't buy it like you're going to some fucking fancy Brazilian restaurant where you have to individually order everything on the menu and you're
yeah,
taxed on every single fucking thing.
and they
Like,
have
it's
to
so
go kill the
stupid.
lamb out back and cut it,
Exactly.
right?
Like, when you think about it, the reason everybody thinks American healthcare is amazing is because people from other countries go for specialized care.
Very
But
specific, yeah.
specialized care just means, okay, that's like having a town with only sushi restaurants. Like,
Mhm.
who the fuck cares? That's great that you can do this one thing all over the world, but you have a city of 2 million people who can't get basic fucking care.
Yeah, who can't get
What's
just
the point?
yeah,
What's the point?
yeah, who
Like,
can't
what the
get
fuck is the point?
yeah,
It
you
doesn't
have
make
this
sense.
ball and sushi restaurant, but you don't
Exactly.
no one can go get a no one can get a gallon of milk and some ground beef.
Right. Whereas now you can actually have a situation where you could have that sushi restaurant. You can have those things, but like the sushi restaurants are better off because, and you know this because you were on this pathway. You know goddamn well that everybody who goes to be a doctor does not want to be a doctor because it's an amazing thing to do to help people. They
Mm,
do it because they know it's a fucking payday. A lot of people,
yeah, yeah.
right? And
I
I
know, I
don't.
was admittedly half and half. I loved the idea of helping people. I loved
Thank
volunteering.
God you were at least half and a half. A lot of people, and I know this, it goes everywhere, but like, and I have no problem with doctors being rich.
Yeah,
That's like, yes, if you
yeah,
go to fucking school for 6 years and have to do the shit that they have to do,
yeah,
absolutely, you get paid better. But it shouldn't be because like there's like big corporations that sell drugs, like kind of
yeah.
controlling
Po
shit. You know what I mean?
Lining your
It's
pockets because you prescribe the new
exactly,
whatever, Pfizer,
yes,
GlaxoSmithKline,
right.
the yeah,
Like the basic thing, I don't know. It's just like weird to me. Like, you guys need, if you're going to, you want to talk about national security. Okay, health is a national security. If you
yeah,
have large portions of your population get sick all at once, you are susceptible to certain things from
yeah,
other. Like, I don't understand how everything is like, oh, communism, they're coming to get us, da 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 da. But like, we don't close the gate. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, you
yeah,
can't. We're talking about like getting like, again, yeah, you need national defense, you need guns and shit, but guns aren't going to stop a virus.
yeah.
Guns aren't going to stop your fucking infrastructure from getting shut
They're not
down.
gonna stop unemployment. They're not gonna stop
Exactly.
rising
They can
fentanyl
only,
addiction.
they're a tool for a purpose. Absolutely, they are. And they
Sure.
do that purpose well. But you don't fucking build a house with a hoe. You know what I mean? Like, you use
Yeah,
the right tool for the right job. And
yeah,
in this case, I think you guys need to go. And I don't think there should be a federal. I think it should be still state, but it should be like the way they implemented the drinking age.
yeah,
Like, fine, you guys don't want to take care of your fucking people, we won't take care of you. Like,
yeah,
that's how it should be. It should be
yeah,
held at hostage. Fine, you don't want to like give your people a decent health care and still have the option. If you're rich, you can go to these fancy places if you want, absolutely. But everybody doesn't go bankrupt because they broke their fucking leg
yeah,
and they just happened to not be employed at the time.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
It's
I remember when my sister's husband lost her job and they were paying like 2 grand a month to a company called Cobra. Like, a company literally named after the bad guy in G.I. Joe. And these are your friends? Like, holy fuck, dude. Think about it. Like, just like
yeah,
step away from the whole like, whatever, like right
yeah,
or wrong. You got people paying 2 grand just to keep
to
like
Cobra.
to Cobra. And it was because my 3 nieces all had pre-existing conditions. They were all born with childhood arthritis, not something they could help, right? But because of that, they're now their parents now owe this company, X amount of dollars just
Yeah.
because they have that problem.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was super night and day when my sister got divorced. Like she got a divorce. If she had stayed in Georgia, she would, I don't know, she might be homeless now. Now with COVID and everything that happened, she might not because she didn't have an education. She was just a stay-at-home mom, right? She was a good one, but she couldn't make so much money by herself.
Yeah.
But she was able to come up here, and Sick Kids Hospital is the #1 children's hospital in the world. It's located here in Toronto, and they opened a case on those three. Like an international study on my nieces has been opened because their childhood arthritis that wasn't covered by anybody in Georgia was so unique that they thought, okay, shit, these girls need to be researched. Like this
Yeah.
is something that could save a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So it's just like, even because the medicine was set up differently, you miss this super huge opportunity to study this rare thing that might save other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so you can say, yeah, it's great to make money, but look at all this fucking real opportunity you're losing. Look at all this IP. Look at
Yeah.
all this shit that's just going out down the fucking tubes because you're like, oh, it's not covered.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fucking ridiculous. Yeah.
I thought I just saw a poof of smoke.
Oh, not on my end. You good?
Feather? Yeah, it looked like I was just watching it. I was like, is Rob smoking? And I realized it was right here. I was like,
It'd be a lot more than a poof.
it'd be
You're just like a blackout.
damn it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like, you could almost draw analogies between like the actual creation of the military industrial complex and why that can apply to healthcare. And the reasoning
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that as much as we need to keep the military industrial complex at bay, the reality is that what Curtis LeMay said is right when America got into the war, when we first went into Europe, the European theater,
Mhm.
at the rate that our planes were being shot down versus the rate at which we are producing new ones, he said that we'll be out of planes in 30 days. Obviously, we ramped up the War Powers Act under FDR,
Yeah.
and LeMay later became the Secretary of Air Force, and then the head of the Strategic Air Command was right there with Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Crazy
Mhm.
guy, great guy. The reasoning is that for all future things, it was like, just because we're not at war in Korea or Vietnam doesn't mean that we can just shut down all of the assembly lines of M1 Abrams tanks or H1s or whatever, fighter jets, F-16s, naval destroyers, because when war strikes, and war doesn't strike at a time of convenience, when war strikes, it's not just that, right? It's not just, back to the fountain analogy. Oops. It's not just that you can, let the fountain run dry and then, we'll put water in it when we need it.
Correct.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're going to destroy the fountain. And now
Yeah.
the cost of making a new fountain is going to far outweigh the cost of just putting some bottled water in there. And
Mhm.
that's what the entire, argument for military industrial complexes is, like, you have to at least keep like a skeleton crew of like trained like professionals in, who can whatever create new avionics for, F-16s or whatever the fuck they're
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
And you have to keep that line so that you can take that engine and you can turn it up to 10 in a time of war, but you never want to turn it
Yeah.
off.
No, I
And I get that
see.
argument, but that argument
Yeah.
needs to apply to healthcare, where we have to have this thing where it's like, we can't just have this thing come in and kill everyone, because now it's like,
Right.
like now Tesla's whatever, back in like May, they're like, we're tapping Tesla and GM to build ventilators. And it's like, where
Right.
we should
Yeah.
have had like a system running at the very least at one and been able to turn the dial, as opposed to now we have to build a system. It's like, no,
Exactly.
turn it on. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in
There's no
conclusion,
reason
yeah.
that, like, yeah, if you can subsidize like other shit like food and like pharmaceuticals, there's no reason you can't subsidize having like literally machine. It's literally just having machines. It's not even, you don't even have to keep these machines running. A lot of them are run like on like motherboards, right? So it's like electronic. So if you had like an extra 20% of ventilators stored somewhere like, say, Texas, right, or some central like location, then we know, okay, well, like fucking Montana is like where all of our ventilators
Yeah.
are. In case this shit goes down, we
Yeah.
have a clear route from Montana to every other state. Or you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can
Central
set up these
location.
things.
We have
Yes.
the airstrip set up. We can
Yeah.
do a Berlin airlift to every city.
Exactly. There needs
And
to be
it's
like backup for these for shit like this.
yeah.
I mean, it's
And the
it's
thing
so
is we do
dumb.
have those backups, but it's only for the shit that kills people. They're like,
I
we have
know.
all of our nukes, we have all of our
Like
fighter
right away though, even that, like what's the point? Like that's great that we have all this like anti-nuke stuff, but like nuke is a nuke. Like it's like once that shit starts popping off, it's over in some regard, you know what I
it's
mean?
in every regard.
Exactly. Like this is not the same world
Put
we
a
live
gun
in
to
as
your
soon as that
head.
thing goes
Yeah,
on.
put a gun to your head if a nuke
Right.
goes off. Because this isn't oh they bombed Pearl Harbor. This
No.
is this
This
is
is
that land's
lobbing.
irradiated for the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Revelations is here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's so in conclusion, today's thesis is if you support the military industrial complex, that means you also support healthcare. So I guess swallow that red pill.
Yeah, in a way. I think both should be
I think that's how
curtailed.
we
Like
bridge
one,
it.
it's like one, yeah, one is at 11 and one is at 2, and they both
We
need to
should-
be brought to 5.
Yes.
A
And
steady
that
5, a
that
steady boil,
a
or a
steady yeah,
simmer,
and
if you
one can
will.
be turned down and they both can be turned down and both can be turned up. That's
Exactly, but not permanently. Like that's
not
the thing. That's they can't just be like, oh well, and then eventually turned off quietly
yeah,
in the
yeah, exactly.
background. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's the sound of a
right.
heart monitor flatlining.
Right. Because what's the difference if you can't reach for like a mag of ammo, or you can't reach for like a doctor to resuscitate a victim? It's the same shit. You're still losing
It's
bodies.
both national security.
You're losing
You're
bodies, man.
losing
One way or
workers,
the
you're
other.
losing members of your tax pool
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
you use to get money from.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe the real lesson I've learned in the last 4 years is I don't fucking want anything to do with politics.
I think politics takes these words, capitalism, socialism, communism, and they make them so black and white instead of
And
making
nothing.
them what they are, which is like tools.
Yeah.
Right? They're different ideas of setting up things, and all three of them have flaws because they're human inventions.
Yeah.
So there were human inventions that were invented hundreds of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Let's think about this. What else really, like, even your constitution has amendments. Like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
but like, no, these economic things are untouchable.
We must
like,
keep these how these are forever. And
exactly.
It's like, again, we're using that caveman software for a space age world.
Right.
Right.
It needs to more be like, okay, this area of industry is economically capitalist, and this area of our industry is economically socialist. The reason is because people need to live with food and water and da 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 da. But people don't need sports cars and jets and like like fun things and guns, and like these aren't necessarily part of life. That like, oh man, if I don't fire my gun today, I'm not gonna live. You know what I mean? Like, you have to eat every day. You have to drink every day. You have to have a roof over your head, or you die. You'll die of
antibiotics. Yeah,
exactly. Guns are fun. Guns are awesome, and they're cool to protect yourself with. Absolutely, but what's the point of protecting yourself if you've got nothing to protect?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So like it's gotta be like some order to the importance of things, right? I'm not anti any of these things. I love buying shit. I like seeing things improve and get cooler and get better. I love technology and the way it advances, but I don't like it when I see like a tech company living like a fucking king with their like little fiefdom of like, like
personal
company
security and militias
and personal armies and like personal fucking like literal like surrounding themselves with like dorms, like corporate dorms.
Yeah, like you see
it's like you don't get a house, you just live here.
No, it's like campuses though, right? It's like campuses. I know. Google campus, Apple.
That shit terrifies me.
They're just these nation states sprouting up.
Basically, yeah.
And
then there's so many PMCs. Like, what stopped these people from just like walling off San Francisco and just being like, this is no longer part of America anymore. Go fuck yourself.
This is Silicon Valley. This is making a country. This is Silica.
Right.
Instead of Silicon Valley, this is Silica.
Taking over all of California, all the way down to like New Mexico, like just taking over that area of the state.
I don't think that's that far fetched.
I know, that's the scary point. It's like we've let them just do whatever they want for so fucking long.
Only a matter of time before Goldman Sachs and like Barclays buys off like all of Manhattan Island, sets up again a perimeter, get some like naval patrol
Right.
boats. Yeah, I mean, if I mean if anyone can afford Blackwater or whatever it is now, XE contracting,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
go
so many
buy
of
off
them,
some
dude.
guys that are making 80 grand a year in the Rangers or Delta Force. Give them 500.
Yeah.
Set up a perimeter. Here's
Uh,
the best weapons money can buy.
yep.
You know, maybe that's the natural evolution of things. Maybe it
And the
just
thing
that's
is,
what we're
that
going
thing
to.
sucks. That's what sucks though, because as soon as that shit starts, we're done. Because like,
You can't undo that.
if a billionaire can like, well, it also makes you so susceptible to every other country.
Yes.
Okay, Google
Yes.
Google took over California. What's gonna stop Putin from being like, hey, Alaska's ours again? Come get
Exactly.
it. Like, you
Exactly.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the only reason we don't go to war is because these countries know not to do these things. What happens when something comes along that shows, well, America's actually kind of susceptible to this, or like, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That's what scares me
Mm-hmm.
about Corona. That's what scared me about like all the shit that's been going on. Not that the side, like one side won and the other side, it's like, you guys aren't the only ones watching.
That's
There,
yeah.
everybody's watching you.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody's watching. Everybody saw all those people run into the like
Yeah.
everybody. So
Yeah.
even enemies, your like everybody
Yes.
saw that.
Yes.
Like,
Well, that's the
that's
time you
not
strike.
good.
That's the time you
Like,
strike. Is during a civil war. That's when you get in, right?
exactly.
It's when you see,
I know,
when
right?
the teachers
That's
are talking to each other at the front of the room, that's when you can sneak out or go get on your
yeah,
phone. If they see the nation
right.
collapsing, that's when it's like Alaska's ours. That's when China moves on Taiwan, right? The
Exactly.
house
Because
divided.
well, you can see them doing it already.
Yeah.
They're already moving on Taiwan. They're already moving on.
Yeah. It's,
Like,
and then back
it's
to what we
fucking
were saying earlier, part of me is like, as we talk about this, I feel my heart rate getting up and I'm like, fuck, with America's
me
falling. And
too.
then part of me is just like, they're telling me the forest is on fire, but I'm looking around and I'm like, hey, the
Okay,
electricity's on,
I
the
think
podcast is,
it's one of those in the direction that it is currently headed. If nobody steps up and changes the direction of the country, yes, it's a possibility. But your country's also been here before, and it's had leaders step up and change the direction. So it's like
yeah,
it can happen. It's
that's,
just like you're going through some shit and some other growing pains as well, like
yeah,
the information and like propaganda and who's controlling the information that is getting into your country.
yes,
Who
exactly,
knows?
exactly,
Who the
exactly,
fuck
right?
knows? Like
Exactly. What custom tailored
yeah,
Facebook feed are you getting? You know?
right. And if you're some weird nerd like me and you follow a bunch of weird shit, then you know that like scammers and fucking like not hackers, but like people who like do phishing and like all this kind of shit has grown so much more because we have all of these countries where people can't really make money, but they have the internet.
Hmm.
And scams and fucking getting people to like click on shit for ad revenue is the easiest way to make money right now online. And it's crazy. You just like you can set up like I know there was groups of people who were just like running Americans against each other. Like they would literally
Absolutely.
be
They were
like
putting
the
Blue Lives Matter and
Obama
Black Lives
and
Matter
then the
next to each
Trump
other.
and like they're just the same guy running the fucking
Running both,
pages.
running the both. It's
Yeah.
they would do
Yeah.
blue lives. They do blue lives rallies
Yeah.
next to Black Lives rallies, and they would just and
Yeah.
then the NSA would track the IP address of who made both Facebook groups, and it's like Beijing, and it's like
Right.
because they're just like, hey, the game Watch Dogs. That's one thing you can do is when you're
So
trying to take down
easy.
a compound.
Yeah.
What you do is you choose you see a security guard outside, let's say a building, you order a
Mm.
mob hit on that guy, and then at the same time you call 911 on that guy. So 911 comes to apprehend that guy, and then a mob comes and does a drive-by, and now all of a sudden you got this skirmish, and as the skirmish is
Yeah.
happening, you run in the back door and go grab the hard drive out of whatever. And that's a great game, Watch Dogs too. But like you can do that.
Yeah.
Why isn't that happening on a national level?
Right.
It's because it is. Like I
I mean,
guarantee you,
shit. I
yeah.
played DayZ. I played DayZ, which is a video game where there's factions, and we spread disinformation on the Discord all the time, like just to fuck with people. You always do it. You're like, "Hey, Hightower, we're heading to the like trade shop. Gonna go up Kamensk way," and like you just wait to the forest south of Kamensk, and you're like, "Oh, here comes the ambush, five fuckers," and they come up like clockwork, man, because they're always
Jesus.
like they're always in your DMs and shit, so you can set them up. That's why we have our own private Discord for like our own clan, right?
Actual
But then
clan,
we'll leak shit
a public
publicly,
Discord.
and then
Fuck.
just yeah, and then 5 guys will show up to try to ambush us, and the 3 of us are behind them. We wait until they set up, and we just fucking run up on them and blow them away. Like it's
Jesus.
if it works in video games, why wouldn't it
You
work
know
anywhere
it's
else?
working
Like
in real life. Jesus
yeah,
Christ. I mean, the CIA used to do that with the U-2 spy
psyops.
plane. What? Yeah,
Yeah,
they used to take the
oh, flight
U-2
pamphlets.
manual. They would take that manual and they used to take it, leave it out in the sun, leave coffee rings on it, tear a couple
Mm,
pages, and then they would go disperse these in the Soviet Union. So they
right.
would find what looked like weathered and lost U-2 flight manuals.
Mm,
And so they were all like, hey, we got how this thing works. But the reality is these were false manuals. They had all these specifications about things that the U-2 could actually do much better. So they'd be like, all right, it says ceiling's 40,000 feet. Reality, the ceiling was 70. So but it's just, that was back in the late 50s and early 60s.
mm.
Like, fucking hey, man. Fucking A.
It's super like basic, like human psychology. If you're like good at being a tricky little fuck, like you can get far in like life and like games and shit. Like I've been playing a lot of DayZ lately, so my mind's kind of there. But like even the way we set up like our base, like our home base, there's bait loot all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I got like 4 crates that just like, oh, there's 2 M4s and like a mag in there. And like because I want them to stop and be like, holy shit, they got M4s. Oh, we're gonna grab these
Yeah.
M4s. And they don't go upstairs and grab the LARs and the fucking like Dragonov sniper rifles that
Yeah.
we've got,
Yeah.
right? So like, yeah, that's the point.
Leave fake. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
leave like high-ish tier loot down, like
high-ish. Yeah.
AKs and like M4s and shit like that.
Yeah.
Stuff that aren't super run of the mill, but like,
Yeah.
man, I
Don't.
had a good run. Found
Yeah.
2 Viga shotguns, like the
Yeah.
auto shotguns last run I went
Yeah.
on. It's fucking great.
Yeah. You don't leave them shit like a Jeep Grand Cherokee. You leave them a new, like a Range Rover, but you don't leave them a decked out Land Rover,
Yeah,
right? Just enough
exactly.
to pull
We
them.
don't. Yeah, the Land Rover that has like a mounted turret on top. That's
Yeah, don't leave them
upstairs.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
upstairs.
Yeah,
The Jeep is the shitty thing outside. Inside is like a brand new semi-tinted window Range Rover.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of these days, when you get to the point where this is just like running, doing its thing, and you can start like playing some games and shit. And I got a like gaming PC. We're gonna play some DayZ, man.
Fuck yeah.
Because you want to play a game like you want to play like that thing that you told me about where you can just do anything.
Yeah.
That's the fucking game. We get in there, we meet up, we make a base, and we just go fucking raise hell.
Fuck yeah.
You can like
What's that?
grow weed and shit in that game.
That's insane.
Yeah, and like make bricks and like sell them. And like one guy did this video of like I became the richest guy on the server, and he just like basically maxed out his bank account. And then every time people at the end, he's like, "All right, I did what I did." And so people would come in and be like, "Yo, what do you need?" And they're like, I don't know." He's like, "Yo, here's some night vision goggles and a fucking sniper rifle." And they're like, "What the
That's
fuck?"
how
Yeah,
you can. I
because he
mean,
had
that's
just
like
so much money.
that's CIA tier shit. You just go
Yeah,
in and you're like, hey, fuck those guys, right? And they're like, yeah. They're like, here's some miniguns and here's some fighter
you can
jets.
do it all the time. You like supply other factions who like,
Jesus. So you can
yeah,
just be like a Rothschild, just fund both sides of the war.
if you want. Like, see,
Fuck.
the faction I'm with, we're called the Hunter faction, and basically we're neutral. We don't have any alliances, but we also don't have any real enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you shoot us in the open, and we all wear like green armbands, like you're fucked,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
because like you've gone us now, you owe us loot
Yeah.
essentially, and you don't fuck with us because our area is in a castle surrounded by really thick forest, and those forests have like 12 wolf spawns and bear spawns. So there's like you
Just
trying to sneak through the forest is you're gonna get attacked by a pack
you're
of
gonna be
wolves.
killed. Yeah.
And we're gonna hear you coming because you're gonna be like fucking firing your shotgun trying to stay alive. So like it's crazy, man.
I remember how I remember when John used to I remember he would play Red Alert. I
Mm,
remember one thing he would always do is he'd make great walls of Tesla coils. So instead of having Tesla
sure.
coils, which all cover like, whatever, 20 feet from them, however
Yeah,
many
yeah,
blocks on the grid it would be, John would actually put them next to each other.
yeah.
And he would just create these walls of Tesla coils. And I remember it was enough that it wasn't, so it slowly bumped up from the ability to shock people to where there were enough of them that would strike at the same time that he could blow up tanks.
Right.
And I remember he would just win these games and be playing it on like expert level. And I'll be like, I'll be like, but you didn't develop into the newest thing where you can build nukes and shit. And he'd be like, because Tesla coils, they're just cheap enough that there's no
Yeah.
reason to go past that. So he would just build like 2 deep, 3 deep. And I would just be like, why are you doing that? And he would just be like, because it wins. It doesn't matter if, it doesn't matter what tanks you give at me.
Yeah,
He's
he
like, I'm
was
gonna
just
hit you with
DPS
the
min maxing, like damage per
he,
second min
exactly. He's
max.
like,
Yeah,
exactly. He was like, it doesn't matter what, doesn't matter how many people you send over here.
yeah,
I'm going to
you
hit them
go
with the
through.
finger of God.
So
And
yeah,
I used to watch him in awe, and I'd be like, you're a fucking military commander. Or like sometimes, remember he'd go try to like take cities,
yeah,
and I'd be like, why aren't you getting like, there's like, mammoth tanks and like different things, but he would just get your basic like run of the mill like level 1 like rocket soldiers, where it'd be like
right.
3 soldiers each with rocket launchers, and it would take like
Mhm.
whatever 10 seconds to reload, and they'd only do so much damage. But what he would do is he would just spawn, and I shit you not, he would just spawn these groups of like 300 to 400, and it was
Yeah,
like, why are you doing that?
never. They cover each other's reach
They cover each
time. Yeah,
other and they all fire rockets at the same time. So you'd see like a tank coming, and like the computer would slow down because they'd all say
yeah,
like
of
whatever the same
course.
word,
Yeah,
they'd
yeah,
all be
yeah,
like target ahead, but you just hear like it'd be like echoing, you'd be like target
yeah, yeah,
ahead, and
yeah,
they'd
yeah.
all turn and go boom, and they'd hit it, and it would just, not only that, they'd shoot so many that some would keep going because the tank was already destroyed, so it would just fly into the
No
guys
target.
behind them.
Yeah,
And it'd be like, okay, whatever. Sometimes they'd ride a tank right through them, and they'd, it'd just mush a red line where they just squished all the soldiers. But it didn't matter because it was like an amoeba. It would just turn around and just cover in the target ahead, and they'd all
yeah,
just
yeah.
boom. And he used to beat these games using like like level 1 weapons. And I was just like, I just thought he was a genius. But it's kind of that, right? You can just find
Yeah.
these like these weird
Oh,
tactical advantages where it's like,
like that's why I really like. I was playing hardcore like Call of Duty for the last 6 months, like just nonstop, and then I started playing DayZ because like Call of Duty, the whole point is like who can shoot first.
mm-hmm,
But like DayZ, it's like okay, you have to hit your shots absolutely, and like no, I'd say it's even more realistic with gun recoil and shit like
mm-hmm,
that. But like it's about stalking people. It's about like understanding how people think when they're looting and when they're running away, and like
mm-hmm.
it's not like a gunfight can last 40 minutes sometimes with
Yeah,
one person
yeah,
because like you're repositioning and you're like
yeah,
fucking trying to rush in and you're like oh shit he hit me I gotta like go back and rebandage and like eat something to like recover some of my
yeah,
health and like just
yeah.
chill in a bush for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, just wait for it to, yeah,
You have to think like that, right?
yeah.
And
I like shit like
depending on how you're playing, if you're using like in-game voice, it's hilarious because like other people, you can hear them like yelling and shit, like "Get down! They're in the left. They're in the barn." Like, you're like, "I'm almost dead."
that.
Yeah.
I remember Halo Online,
Mm,
and it was like Halo 1. So this was like 2002 or 2003. Like old. But I remember we had it online. And I remember me and some friends actually, and I look back at it, I'm like, that's like, it's like deliciously deceptive what we used to do, because we realized we had one, like my best friend, like the one who I like texted when I lived in the frat house, like that same friend, and he was like globally ranked on like Halo.
yeah,
But even then, it didn't matter because if he had me and like 5 other shitty friends, that one global ranking didn't do much.
right.
And it was because as a team, it didn't matter what your kill to death ratio is. If everyone's dying except one guy, it doesn't matter,
Yeah,
right?
your
It's having
team's
Michael
still
Jordan
useless.
on a team of retards.
Yeah,
He can only carry the team so much. So I remember we actually devised this plan where I would go out and I would join other teams. But then like he and I would talk on the cell phone. So there'd be like chat on the
yeah,
game, but
yeah,
then
yeah.
there'd be like out of like
That
earshot
happens on Daisy
where we'd
sometimes
play
too.
on,
Yeah,
well, I would go into other teams, and then right at the right moment, I might play with that team for like 4 or 5 rounds. But then when I met up and we were playing my best friend, I'd be like, like we'd have like a go word or whatever it is. Like I think one of the ones we used was like Pearl Harbor. It was like tiger, tiger,
mm,
tiger.
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
And I would wait until all of my guys were getting ready to go siege. And then I would just take the rocket launcher and shoot it right into the ground. I'd kill myself. I'd kill
Yeah,
all of them.
right,
And then he
right,
would swoop in and they'd be like, what the fuck? It was a team killer.
right,
And my
right.
name was always just Mr. Happy. And they'd be like, Happy and I'd be like, I'm sorry. It was an accident. I was trying to. But because I would only do it once every like 5 rounds, I could write it off as like I just clicked like the wrong button. because it's not like I
right.
did it nonstop. So it'd be like, but it was just this tactical like knife in the side, right at the right.
Yeah,
I was like
tactical
12.
goofball.
I was like 12, but I look
Yeah,
back and I'm like, that's evil.
yeah,
We
yeah.
were like,
It's
yeah, we're
like
talking about, yeah, it was just fuck.
tactical goofball. Yeah, we like it's same like Daisy. Sometimes you at nighttime it'll get cold, so groups will start a fire, but you can see the fires like even in the forests during the day. You can see the smoke and shit. So like I've seen people who have like stalked people, like groups of 2 or 3 guys that are just sitting around the fire, either cooking or just trying to warm up, and they'll run up and they'll just drop a grenade and run away, and then like way too quickly for the guys to realize what's going on. They're like, "Hey, what?" It's like done.
Yeah, the other times we would do things like suicides where like I would like pull a grenade, but I wouldn't even throw it.
Yeah,
I would just stand there with it. So you wouldn't. So again, it was all about tactical suicides because
right.
you could always have plans and shit, but no one would ever. No one. Everything was always limited at like this person's gonna go for self preservation.
Yeah, yeah,
No
yeah.
one ever
See,
factored in suicide. And so, but not only that, this guy, and it's 5:45. I got to wrap this up in like
yeah,
15.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
wrap it up.
All right. Do you need me to
How
wrap it up
long is
sooner?
50?
Dude,
Yeah, like as soon as we can. After this, probably. Yeah,
like one. Okay, we'll go for like 2 minutes. And it was
yeah,
like,
sounds good.
but I remember I used to, and again, it was like 12, 13. This was like pre like Iraq invasion. I remember another tactic we
Mhm.
had was we started to get crazy because instead of being, I was Mr. Happy. That was my name, all caps, Mr. Happy. I started recruiting other people into Happy's clan. And
Mm,
then we'd also start to call ourselves Happy's children.
yeah,
And
you do
what
well in DayZ.
what they would do, what they would do is I would then tell them, I'd be like, go join these other clans. And I'd be like, wait until I give you like,
Infiltrate.
and then I would email them on like Netscape or something as opposed to on the
Sure,
channel.
sure, sure.
And it
Yeah,
was all about like clearing a path for this one team that had my best friend on it. And I would be like, okay, I need you to go on a full suicide right now. And they
right,
didn't care. They were like, I'll do it for the motherland. That was like for Happy's
right.
children. And I just had these teams of people tactically killing themselves so my
Yeah,
friend's team would advance. And I remember I started to get really good at it. I started to like manipulate whole like, whole
yeah.
like groups of games. And it was around that time I remember my mom coming because I'd spent like 12 hours a day for like a month on it. I vaguely remember my mom coming in saying, if you want to like kill, you can go join the army. Otherwise, like go outside. And that was the end. That was the end of
Your
Happy's
mom's like,
Children.
stop role playing a psychopath.
She was like, stop
Go
role playing
outside.
to see, stop trying to be the Bilderberg group and like manipulate other sides. Just stop
Dude,
playing.
you would
So that was
love
the
Daisy or
so
like
that was
Rust or
I was
like
gonna say, so that was the true death knell. It wasn't Happy's Children. It was
mm,
it was an
mom.
outside it was an outside wild card. No one
Happy's
for all,
mom.
for all I knew,
Happy's mom.
I would
Yeah.
love to find out one day that my mom was gaming and she was like, I'm gonna make a tactical move. I found
Your
the
mom was
cell
actually, yeah, your mom was actually like running the
on the
server
other
and
team
wanted
and she
you
was
out
like
of there because you were causing too much
she like
anarchy and she
backtracked
couldn't put her plans in order.
she like
Yeah,
backtracked what she was hearing on the voice chat versus what she
yeah,
was
yeah.
hearing from my
It
room and she
sounds
was
a
like,
lot
I
like
think I found
Tom.
the cell.
Yeah,
I found Happy's Children. And
Tom's
then
Garrigan.
she's like, don't worry, I grounded him. He's outside now. Like the
Yeah,
field is clean.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just a dirty, dirty game of warfare.
Cut the head off a snake.
Yep.
He's grounded.
Never saw it coming. Fuck.
That's fucking
All
funny.
right. Well,
Yeah,
this has been a fantastic podcast, Rob. Thank you.
absolutely.
I needed
No
this
worries, man.
today. Thank you very much, my
Cheers.
friend. As always, I love you, Rob. You're always welcome on this podcast, and thank you for your stories. And
No worries, dude.
2021 is gonna be good.
Ah,
2021 is
how
gonna
could
be
it be
good.
any worse?
You know why it's gonna be good? Because it can't get any worse.
Yeah, basically.
All right,
All right,
brother.
buddy.
I'll see you,
Take
man.
care.
Later, buddy. Peace.